Hmm.
And that's really what they're looking for, to understand that we don't have a lot of people that are going to go out and dive into the AI side,
Yep.
but they're going to go to companies like yours for the AI assistance. So that's the power of what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%, right? As it gets more competitive and more complicated with AI, right? We can help demystify and simplify things, right? The last thing I'll say, because I can't speak here for an hour, but I know it's not my show. Lance will tell you I'll take it over.
Well, I'll be back. You keep
Yeah.
talking.
Okay, sounds good. That sounds like a plan to me. But the other, yeah, we'll do a Vlad takeover session. Yeah. But the other thing people want is they want to pay very little for jobs, right? They're like, these advertising prices are crazy. It's too expensive. Why? The reason they're so expensive is because you're paying to get the job today, right? You're getting the job today, so you're paying the most for a specific referral. You're going on Angie's, Thumbtack, CraftJack, Service Direct, right? Those are going to be the most expensive, 300, 600, et cetera, right? For prices. However, if you do something like Michael Pinto did and you build a brand, right? Then you're going to spend very little because people know of you. Your reputation will grow. And then that's where you can make a lot of money for spending a little bit. And I always like to tell people, right? What do you think of in terms of price range when you think of Walmart versus Lamborghini, right? The branding does make a difference. It's long
Absolutely.
term, though. Yeah.
Well, Vlad, I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Didn't want you to take over the hour show.
Yeah, I was going to.
Yeah, I know. But there's still a lot of people here. And you know what? This is day 3. The show ends in, I don't know, an hour or so. And it's still crowded.
Yeah, it is actually a packed show today, which is awesome. I actually will have to say I've been to other conferences. The Experience Conference is a wonderful one, and people are really engaging. They're friendly, and if people haven't attended, I highly recommend you guys check out the scene and come say hello to me if you do.
All righty. Thank you. And we'll chat again, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Okay, everybody, one more time before the end of the day, and then we have all day tomorrow to do some more interviews. But for now, I want to end the day talking to, and I'm just going to say, Becky, I mean, we've done trainings together. We've done other shows like this. You are the person that does the photography, the marketing, the editing, the production of promoting all of these contractors that are here. So tell us a little bit about you and what you really do, not what I just tried to explain.
Oh, I like it. You kind of made me sound fancy.
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
Take it. I mean, the title I say is photographer, videographer, and digital media manager. But yeah,
It doesn't fit on a card, does it?
no, it kind of doesn't. I think it's the max on LinkedIn on my little bio there at the top where it says, "What's your job title?" It fits. I just had to use a slash instead of spaces. But yeah, I mean, I have been very fortunate to get to teach a workshop with you over this topic. We're kind of intertwined in that way.
That was in Mexico.
It was Puerto Vallarta.
It was a nice place to go.
I'll do that again. Anyone want to sign up for that?
Yeah, really. So how does what you do help all the contractors and people that are here in this industry?
So it's in all different ways because, photography and videography, that's a great marketing tool as well as just documentation. And then when it comes to digital media management, that's your social media. Are you telling me to hold it up closer?
Yeah,
okay,
closer.
I saw it. Is that a little better, you
Just a
think?
little.
Okay, and then digital media marketing is, getting yourself in front of the right people, right? With marketing, you talk about marketing as well. But what I focus on is organic reach. So yes, I do ads as well, but I focus on what's going to be free for you. How are you going to get stuff out for free without having
The organic stuff.
Yeah,
Just
organic
basically.
reach. Exactly.
And there's people here in all different verticals, from carpet manufacturers and cleaners, plumbers, electricians. I mean, everybody is here with all kinds of technical tools and things that they do, but they all need to market.
Oh, yes.
And I think the way that you approach the industry and being able to help them is a little unique.
Oh, thank you.
It just is, I've seen you do the training, and the uniqueness is, one, that you care, and you take each company on as an individual, not just, all right, here's the routine. This is what
Oh,
you
I'm
do.
glad you see that because yeah, that's the biggest goal is getting to help the company and getting to see the company evolve. That's the most rewarding thing for me is just getting to see, hey, we started from here, we started from the ground, or maybe we started from high up, but how can I take you to that next level? So
Any special tricks or things that are favorite of yours in that area?
well, it depends on because like you said, there's all different types of companies in this industry across the board. So it does depend on kind of where you're at, but I recommend engaging with your audience in any way that you can, whether it be posting a live video very often because those pop up first on everyone's feed. Or am I holding it close enough?
You're fine.
um or just engaging with your audience as much as you can, posting as often as you can, and even posting stuff that you think people wouldn't care about. People care more than you think.
I did a training the other day and I talked about talking to your audience, but not for things that you like, because they may like something completely different. You
Yeah.
can't just tell them what you like. You got to tell them what they like.
Yeah, and even asking your audience what they like and then talking about that is a great way to approach it
And
too.
that's the idea. It's really changing it to the direction of what their needs and wants are.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, no, I like the whole marketing side of this. I like the way that you did your presentation when we did it in Mexico.
I
And
appreciate yours as well.
that's why I wanted to talk to you here. So if anybody out there wants to get your type of help with promoting their business, how do they reach you?
Well, I mean, you can reach me directly if you want to. What do we want to give
You
them?
can give them your website, you can give whatever email, whatever contact you
Well,
want to
I'm
do.
Becky Tomeno. You can reach me through anything, honestly. I'll give you the fun one. So I'm on Instagram as Gotta Love Monkeys. This is my personal page, GOTTALOVEMONKEYS. Yes, that's my name on Instagram. You can reach me there. You can find me on Facebook as Becky Tomeno. And my last name is kind of tricky because it sounds like an A sometimes, but it's TOMAINO, Tomeno. Sometimes I say it tomato, tomato, however you want to say it, doesn't really matter. Like
Okay.
we were saying earlier, we answer to anything, right? But yeah, and then I own Rebecca Lauren Photography and Rebecca Lauren Media. So a great way to look at that is just RebeccaLaurenPhotography.com. But I'm on everything. I'm on LinkedIn, as you all should be. Facebook, Instagram, all of the things. So
And now you're on Normie TV.
I'm on Normie TV. I'm famous now.
Yes, you are. So, well, I appreciate you stopping by. I know that you've been running around talking to people all day too, and my voice is just about gone. So
Do you have any left for tomorrow?
I'll try not to talk much tonight.
Okay, good.
So
A little sabbatical, and then we're chatting.
absolutely. So thank you again for stopping by. We appreciate it. And hopefully the people out there, if they need your services, will reach out.
Well, awesome. Reach out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lance. This was fun.
And I'm going to turn it over to you. This is Skip Jankowski. He is a Normie Pro, like Doug said earlier. He's become a good friend. He's one of our senior trainers. He is from the West Coast. We don't hold that against him. And Skip, I'm going to turn it over to you for your presentation. Share your screen, and we'll be here if you need any assistance.
All right. Thank you very much. By the way, this presentation, I didn't get the memo. It was sent out to all of attendees that I would be talking about mycotoxins. I'm actually taking a different pathway tonight. In the future, I can talk about it, but I wanted to give something a little bit more of an overview. It'll make sense. Hang with me. Nobody has to take notes. You don't have to turn your brains on too much, but hopefully this will make sense. And this is where I have a lot of passion for this and why I have so much advocacy for Normie, because Normie talks about this more than any of the other training and or certification entities that are out there. And what you hopefully will see if I do a decent enough job is that we are absolutely in the indoor air quality arena, and we are certainly decontaminating microbially contaminated environments that can have a direct impact on health. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen here. Here's the National Institute of Health, Moisture and Mold Remediation The presence of excessive moisture in buildings has been linked to occupational illness, right? Vis-a-vis, simply stated, water damaged buildings, damper water damaged buildings are unhealthy. We can go to the EPA, right? Molds are usually not a problem indoors. Okay, I think we might challenge that. Unless mold spores land on a wet or damp spot and begin growing. Some of us may have a problem with that, inhaling or touching mold. Bottom line is, again, simply stated, water damaged buildings, damp or water damaged buildings are unhealthy. California, this was a big step out here. California Department of Health has concluded that the presence of water damage, dampness, visible mold, or mold odor in schools, workplaces, residences, and other indoor environments is unhealthy. Typically, though, we don't get these agencies to tell people why. Let's take a look at how big the problem might be. We know it's a big problem, genetically and immunologically. This particular study, which is Quest Diagnostics, at the time that they did this was a 10-year retrospective analysis from 2000 to 2010, and then published in 2011, represented the largest study of allergy testing in the United States at that time. It involved 1.5 billion patient interactions across the country. They then listed 30 cities in the United States. Can everybody see that?
Yes, you're good.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take the 2 Super Bowl cities. And I'm going to ask for a volunteer out there to do a quick mathematical search or calculation. Let's look at Philadelphia, 12% of the population, right, confirmed to have a mold sensitization, a mold allergy. So that's Philly. Then we go down to Kansas City, and we have 16% of the population. That's a lot of people, folks, right? What I can tell you is Cincinnati at 13%, that equates to about 52,000 people. 52,000 people confirmed, right? That's 13% of their population confirmed to be sensitized to mold. That's a mold allergy. So if we look at this data, and we just look at the top 30 cities in the country, on average, that's over 12% of the population across the spectrum as a mean is confirmed to have a mold allergy. Cincinnati alone is over 50,000 people, right? So where I'm going with this is, again, the agencies, departments of health, water damaged buildings are unhealthy. The predominant media attention for a very long time has been on mold, fungal amplification, and yes, mycotoxins, which I was supposed to talk about. Maybe that'll be a future discussion. But this is a very, very interactive microbial biocontaminant, or a word that is becoming very, very prevalent these days is biotoxin landscape. You have mold species and specificity, right? Quantity and species of mold that amplify in damp to wet conditions. Then you have indicator molds or marker molds, which then produce mycotoxins. We also have VOCs and MVOCs. We have beta glucans. We have gram-negative bacteria, endotoxins, and we also have gram-positive bacteria, Actinomycetes. My point in this presentation tonight is to show some studies from around the world in clinical papers, the prevalence. In other words, global scientific published studies for a very long time have known about this. It has not transitioned into common knowledge into this industry, and hopefully we're going to make a change in that. Bacteria, right? Note about bacteria, don't take notes. There's not going to be a test. It's either gram positive or gram negative, right? And that's a function of staining. Each cell membrane allows for a certain stain to take either red if you're gram negative or purple if you're gram positive. Gram positive are typically associated with actinomycetes, right? Actinomycetes research recently, which we now know that CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, is now a medically accepted diagnosis, right? It characterized by a chronic inflammatory response which is triggered by predominantly a genetic predisposition. HLA-DRDQ gene doesn't function properly. Gram-negative bacteria, we're pretty much talking about endotoxins, both of which, again, actinobacteria, right? Actinomycetes, actinos for short. Endotoxins is an actual part of the membrane of that bacteria, both of which start to grow on buildings along with mold and everything else, but they too, just like mold spores, become aerosolized. And at that point in time, they are now a bioaerosol, and the principal pathway or the triggering mechanism for someone's immune system to respond either immunologically, like what's represented in the Quest study, or for CIRS patient genetically, it's through inhalation. This particular study, the Environmental Health Unit, the National Institute of Health in Finland, talked about indoor microbiota and severely moisture damaged homes and the impact of interventions. Interesting. Again, I so apologize. I've got one screen here which is very large. This is very short. If I'm so fortunate to be able to do this again, I will have solved this technical glitch. The point of this particular study, published in 2017, had everything to do with trying to find microbial contaminant indicators or flags associated with an occupant's illness or prevalence of illness, and to be able to rank that house. We've talked about this in our normie classes, especially the sensitized individual. What is the issue, the health issue of that occupant? And then what are you looking for in the form of a source contaminant? In short, this particular study, that's exactly what they were looking for. What is the occupant illness? How can we assess the various biocontaminants, whether they be mold, mycotoxins, or bacteria, to rank the house a certain way, which then leads to a remediation protocol that may be a better approach to reverse the contamination. So a couple of aspects of the paper. Whoops, sorry about that. So they're using novel sequencing. What we have here in the United States is EnviroBiomics. They are testing for actinobacteria, endotoxins, et cetera, et cetera. However, if we look at this particular part here, a major objective of the study was to make a first step towards closing the gap, trying to identify signature of moisture damage, identification of what is the organism, the predominant organism that could ultimately be identified as a source contaminant. It's pretty cool to me that science is working down that pathway, right? And it's going to be transitional into the industry. Additionally, the limited understanding of microbial characteristics in moisture damaged buildings impedes the effort to clarify what are the adverse health effects of the occupants associated with the damage. So again, is this more bacteria related as a trigger to that occupant health issue? Is it mold, or is it a combination? Interestingly enough, and I don't know, nor am I taking exception with any of the remediation best practices, but here's what they found. Looking at changes in the relative abundance of the top 15 abundant taxa, pre and post intervention, constituting 50% of bacteria and 50% of the fungal species, there was very little change in those interventions vis-a-vis remediations on both of those species of mycotoxins, or I'm sorry, not mycotoxins, but microbial contaminants. And then the absence of clear fungal signals in the buildings that they were assessing was really dumbfounded to them, because the mindset has always been that this is a mold problem in damp and water damaged buildings, regardless of the fact that for decades now we've understood that bacteria plays a major role. Additionally, this is very interesting, Frontiers in Bioscience, published in 2011, again in Finland. I'm finding that when I do this research, there's a lot of data that's being published over the years from places outside of the States. If I were to have talked about it in the future in talking about mycotoxins specifically, Dr. Erika Blom, Lund University in Sweden, did some groundbreaking work in testing air and surface samples in water damaged buildings, not only in Sweden, where she found and confirmed in multiple tests that 80% of the aerosolized samples that she was testing were positive for mycotoxins. And she did the same thing in Katrina, where she found upwards of 60% of Katrina homes had aerosolized mycotoxins that they were able to capture. But here's the thing that was really interesting to me. Yes, we know that things take place on surfaces. Yes, we know that building materials, if they're damp and wet long enough, you get the colonization of mold, mycotoxins, bacteria. But take a look at this. Even back in 2002, actinomycetes in indoor air were higher in buildings that have this contamination in their inner wall insulation material of these damp and wet structures. And they found that because of the size of the actinobacteria, they were more readily migratory from the inner wall cavity into the habitable space based on their size, more so than mold spores. Pretty interesting stuff. When we get into some of the aerosolization potential of, in this case, mold, as reported by Thrasher and Crowley in Industrial Health 2009, how many spores can be aerosolized? So they did a bench study. First and foremost, one of the things that I found interesting by these authors or these researchers was that when mold species exceed those outdoors in an indoor environment, they're already deducing contamination has taken place. What does that mean? If you've got 3,700 Aspergillus penicillium outside, you get 5,200 inside, it's contaminated, even though you have a relative similarity in quantity of those species, right? Okay, so they do a bench study and they set up a biosafety cabinet and they introduce some laminar airflow in there representative of what you would see in a home. And here's what they found. Different species of mold become dislodged, move from a surface into the air in different amounts per species. So as they were testing Cladosporium, and by the way, this is 1 centimeter, which is the equivalent of your fingernail on your index finger. Under 500 spores for Cladosporium type, Stachybotrys 4,000, Aspergillus penicillium 10,000 spores each. Now, one way that I look at this and go, wow, that's like your HVAC system is on. You have a fan on in a room. You're walking past a wall, right? And then all of a sudden, this is by virtue of changes in air pressure differentials. You're pulling these spores or they're being released into the atmosphere. Oftentimes when we're doing spore trap sample testing or assessing companies that do perform this, we're not capturing everything. So this type of background knowledge, whether it be bacteria, or in this case, mold spores and other byproducts of these microbial contaminants, to understand that this has been proven, this has been tested, this has been found elsewhere, gives us some knowledge about what we're really looking at, and if we're not looking at it or for it, we should be, especially because we're talking about health issues. Also published and sent from the same paper, Thrasher and Crowley, right? What has Normie talked about? What do we talk about, unlike other certifying entities or certification or teaching bodies? 9 biocontaminants, right? We can list them. Gram-negative and positive bacteria, mycotoxins, molds, proteins, beta-glucans, endotoxins. Actinomycetes are associated with hypersensitivity pneumonitis, invasive infections, blah, 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 blah. Other types of mycotoxins are producing things very similar to chemotherapy agents. So let me take a breath here and go back and say that I think this is Skip's thinking here. This is my hypothesis that these national entities and agencies, EPA, NIH, CDC, various departments of health, are saying that these water damaged buildings are unhealthy. I think we're getting closer for these agencies to be telling people why. A, because this type of science is becoming very, very much so more prevalent. It's not necessarily readily accessible yet. However, Normie talks about this, and through its teaching is getting more and more professionals to become aware of this. And so therefore that bridge across the Grand Canyon is being built. These are unhealthy environments. Here's why, and here's what we should be looking at to solve the problem conclusively. When we understand the built environment and how that has changed since the 1970s. Well, today people are spending so much more time indoors, right? Agencies are saying like 90% of their time is indoors, whether it's work or at home. What we're seeing is the symptoms of mold exposure are increasing. The rate of aerosolized transmissible diseases, such as the pandemic, have hardly, or nosocomial infection in hospitals, have hardly been affected over decades. I suggest that these either mold allergies or sensitivities, as confirmed over well over a decade ago, in fact, almost 2 decades ago by Quest, with that data compilation, again, 1.5 billion. We're not talking about a study of 200 data points, right? 1.5 billion. If the symptoms of mold exposure are increasing, that means more and more people are becoming aware that something is happening. More and more doctors are becoming more mold literate in treating either an allergy or SEERS. More awareness means there's a whole lot more buildings, whether that be a resident and home ownership, apartment, school, office, government, military housing. There's a lot of buildings out there that are going to need proper decontamination approaches. From the healthcare practitioner standpoint, there's a reason why Dr. Neil Nathan states that when it comes to the most sensitized patients, he's emphasized and will continue to emphasize mold toxicity is the single most common contributing cause of that sensitivity. Mold toxicity is far more common than is currently recognized. Those who are knowledgeable in this field estimate that millions of people are wrestling with this problem, but are entirely unaware of its existence. And the reason for that is the EPA, NIOSH, 5% of buildings were contaminated in the 70s and 80s. By the 90s, people are starting to spend more time indoors, and we're getting a lot smarter in properly diagnosing indoor air contaminants. 35 to 50% of the buildings 10 to 20 years later, right, are now considered microorganism, right, generated contamination, biotoxin, bioaerosol. And then it's translating because more and more doctors are seeing these types of patients. We're talking the scientific evidence of what's being produced in a damp or water damaged building, but now we have the transition to studies that are confirming health issues, and we were getting those these published articles as well. So you've got thousands of scientific publications on mycotoxins, endotoxins, actinobacteria being the principal culprits of the inflammatory response. It used to be mold, or the thought of mycotoxins being that significant contributor to that health issue of an occupant. But now it's conclusive, right? And in fact, other than, I mean, if you talk with pretty much anybody that's in this industry, most will acknowledge that, yeah, it's a health issue. I'm hopeful that the rest of the curtain can be peeled back and the secret can be completely uncovered, in that we now know everything that grows in a damp or water damaged building, and specific protocols such as the NORMI, NC, RSI, NCMP is the right approach to solve it. And in fact, I'll go one step further, that I think the data alone for Sears patients, you know, Dr. Shoemaker, Dr. Andrew Heyman that Doug alluded to earlier, you know, foremost leading authority in this country today, has stated in some of his presentations, and we know this, that 22 to 25% of the population has a genetic predisposition for Sears because of the genetic anomaly, and they don't even know it. Might it be time for the industry to start assuming that when we are going through and assessing from the assessor side and diagnosing and doing inspections of these buildings to determine the degree to which they are water damaged or damp, and then we transition to either hand it off or we're doing the remediation, should we start to assimilate an assumption that regardless of whether the occupant realizes or not, they may be suffering from mold, because the data is pretty clear on that. Almost 4 in 10 people, 25% genetically, 10 to 15% immunologically. Dr. William Nazaroff, I quote this paper quite a bit, Cal Berkeley 2014, Indoor Air. Dr. Nazaroff, Department of Civil Engineering and Environmental Engineering at Cal Berkeley. This particular study, this is a great paper for anybody that wants to look it up and just dig into it over a cup of coffee. Talking about the bioaerosol behavior and its effect on human beings is particularly coupled to the particle size in the 0.1 to 10 micron for bioaerosols. In fact, what he further goes into, which I will not hear, it is that 2 or sub 2 micron particle that is the biggest culprit, whether that is a mycotoxin or a mold species or an actinobacteria or an endotoxin, that is of significant concern, because sub 2 micron particles, they now know, are so easily deposited deep into the human lung and therefore into the bloodstream. Now, we don't have to be doctors, right? We don't treat people. But I think that if we can have and increase and develop our knowledge of what the medical community and the scientific community has identified, and which is now confirmed, all of us in this industry will be better served to more comprehensively and completely and thoroughly decontaminate these damp and water damaged buildings, such that the end result of our efforts leaves an environment that can support recovery and then certainly wellness long-term for the people that are living in these buildings. One of the things that we have that is frustrating to all of us, our clientele, those that we interact with on a daily basis, there are no published standards by the EPA, the NIH, the CDC, various state departments of health on what is a normal amount of mold. And of course, in fairness to them, they almost cannot create that standard because each human being, depending upon how they are biologically made up, do they have that HLA-DR DQ gene anomaly that makes them genetically susceptible to mold illness and disease, which is what Sears is, versus something that's more allergenic or an immunological response. But if we look at other viewpoints, and in this case, the World Health Organization, this particular study, toxins, another great study. Now we're, most of the papers I've referenced thus far were 2009, 2014, 2011. Now we're getting up to 2023. And they reference in this particular paper that the World Health Organization states that spore concentrations above 500 CFU per cubic meter of air is considered as hazardous for an occupant. Not might, not could be, but is. And then above 1,000 CFU per cubic meter of air is considered extremely hazardous. Now, the difference between what we typically use, which is non-viable spore trap or swab sampling, that's a certain number of spores per cubic meter of air. CFU is colony forming units, which is a direct reference to viability. These are culturable results. So if you're culturing 500 colony forming units per cubic meter of air, that's a problem for any occupant. If it's over 1,000, it's a significant. Now, what's an equivalent? How do you test for this? It's basically, we've seen this. The homeowner calls us and says, hey, I went down to the box store and I bought this Petri dish. And because something smelled funny, it smelled moldy, misty, and I followed the directions and I took the lid off and I let it sit for an hour. I covered it up and I sent it to the lab and I've got, 2,500 CFUs per cubic meter of air. What does that mean? Right? So now we have a way to answer that question because we're more knowledgeable and we have some very relevant pieces of information that we can share with people. But the bottom line is that scenario is that's a home that needs to be decontaminated. Different species of mold release different amounts of spores or fragments into the air, into the environment. They're aerosolized. These are now bioaerosols. They're still biotoxins. For example, Aspergillus versicolor, 17 to 170 times higher or more spore or fragments than Cladosporium. Listen, I don't wake up and say, I want to go find out what species of mold releases more spores or fragments of their self into the atmosphere. I don't do that. I'm very thankful that these researchers do. But, as we all know, the health risks for years have been associated with really nasty things. But again, our awareness creates a better pathway. It sheds light on what we should be looking for, and then what our end result should be for our remediation activities. When it comes to Sears, and this is where this is not necessarily new, it's probably 3, 4, 5 years. I think 2019, there was a legal case where the diagnosis of Sears was challenged. It actually was accepted. So since I think 2019, and I referenced this early on in this presentation, that now Sears is a understood and accepted medical condition. But here's what happens. For those of you out there, the actual brain structure changes. And in fact, there's some very cool, very advanced technology out there today in the form of brain scanning of Sears confirmed patients whereby their brains look like the CTE damaged brains of professional athletes, because a lot of these contaminants cross the blood-brain barrier and literally changes the structure of the human brain. It's cuckoo crazy. It's bananas that we've been able to identify this. But because of that, the requirement for us to be aware of this, we don't have to be experts. I'm no experts on this stuff, but I have an understanding of what happens, and therefore it elevates my approach in how I deal with that client who's confirmed to be a Sears patient. Even if they're not, they've got a mold allergy. And even if neither of the two are case, I'm making an assumption so that I don't leave any stone unturned, depending upon how I'm going to assess the building and then subsequently remediate it. The point here is that these people's brains change. The structure of the brain literally is measurable and it changes. That's a pretty scary thing to me anyways. I'm sure it is to everybody else out there, but I can't see everybody else out there. Why is this the case? If we go back to Dr. Nazaroff and Cal Berkeley, the sub 2 micron particle, human hair, 50 to 180 microns. If you have any less, I'm losing mine. So, we have to go 0 to 180 here in some cases, right? But this is it right here. So below 2 microns, what happens is that particle, regardless if it's bacteria, a mold fragment, an endotoxin, actinobacteria, whether it's a mycotoxin, these are 2 microns and below predominantly. They go through, you breathe them in, either through nasally or through your mouth, and they go past the esophagus, through the bronchial tubes, deep into the alveoli, and are released into the bloodstream rather immediately. I'm sure everyone out there that's in attendance tonight has spoken to someone who says, I can't go in that room because if I do, within seconds or a couple of minutes, all of these things start kicking up. All of my symptoms kick in. This is why. It's what is the particle and how small is it? Because that, as has been studied and confirmed now, is very readily, deeply deposited into the lung, which goes into the bloodstream, which subsequently causes this chain reaction of events that is out of control. This particular slide is a representative of what I just talked about. I tend to use as my blood pressure cuff in a building, a lab that incorporates digital microscopy, and it looks at 100% of the slide, and it captures an image of that air spore trap sample. For those of you that are curious, this particular sample had 1.8 million Aspergillus penicillium types per cubic meter of air. Again, inhale deep right through this, right into the alveoli and deep into the alveoli, and goes into the bloodstream. If you're genetically predisposed or immunologically predisposed, things start to happen very, very, very quickly. And even if you're not, some people are sensitized to mold. Well, we know that all mold can make anyone sick. It's a dose, duration, and over time, right? If you're in a contaminated environment long enough, you're going to have an effect. The biggest thing here that is very, 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 very challenging happens when these patients are finally get to a doctor. The doctors have the biggest challenge here. This is crazy. I just put this up here because the physicians that treat these people, predominantly Sears, and for that matter, those who are immunologically sensitized, an allergy type patient, they got to look at everything. There's a lot that they have to do, and it takes a long time for them to be talking to those particular patients. There's a long road to hoe. They got to look at a lot of things. So our job is critical. The physician's job is very, very complex because they have to look at so many things biologically. In the end, And I want to leave a little bit of time here. When we're dealing with people that have allergies, when we're dealing with people that are seers, we have all dealt with them. It's not fun. In many cases, if it's a Sears patient, and right now I'm dealing with 2 referred to me from doctors outside. These folks are at the end of their rope. We know what causes it. And then Normie in its charter, Guidon, is here to change the world. The more we know about what this causes, or the more we can uncover and properly diagnose through the certain testing, whether it's a swab or a spore trap or a viability test, or looking at PCR type testing. What are the endotoxins found? Using a beta glucan, getting a comprehensive diagnosis is going to help us. And of course, the last thing here is that the entire environment, if I go back, and I don't want to have to go back and look at all these slides, but if something started growing on a wall or a floor or a ceiling, it got into the air. It's by the time this was identified, the containment barrier isn't going to contain the biotoxins, which is why it is so critical for the Normie sanitization protocol to be comprehensively enacted and done correctly, because the whole environment, if this was a problem in the kitchen, there's a biotoxin in the bedroom, and vice versa. So we owe it to these buildings to do the best we can, and there's just so much information out there today that can help us be better at what we do to reverse this contamination. I'm going to stop sharing right now. And Lance, if you want to open it up, and I hope that made sense. There was a lot of stuff there. I just hope that logically it makes sense, that we have a lot more stuff that we could be looking at. We have the tools to do it. And Normie's at the forefront of this as it relates to what should you be looking at, and here's how you correct it.
Well, Skip, first thing, I want to thank you for doing that. It was a tremendous amount of information in there. And I do have a few questions I want to follow up with, and some of them were put in by some of our people here. But I want to kind of set the stage first to answer a question about why we don't, or why we haven't to this point reacted as aggressively towards these situations as some other parts of the world. Most of the people here in the room have seen somebody stung by a bee and have a reaction to it. Most of the people here have at some point seen somebody touch poison ivy, and within a very short amount of time have a reaction to it. Yep. The biggest difference is you can see what's causing the problem. In what you're talking about, we're talking about microscopic organisms that people can't see. It's just like saying, when's the last time you looked up in your house? Really? They don't look, they don't see, it doesn't exist. So I think that's one of the bigger things, that we're now dealing with a world that we can't see with the naked eye, and that's causing a lot of these issues. A comment came up the other day about doctors being so specialized in what they do that if they take care of your elbow and your hand hurts, they send you to another doctor. Yeah. But wait a minute, it's a few inches away. They don't do that. The double-edged sword to that, though, kind of works in our favor, because now we're having a lot of doctors actually researching this environmental medicine and getting very, very specialized into it. And these are the people doing the research and bringing this out to the forefront. So I see that as kind of working in our favor, even though we may have to run to 3 or 4 doctors because 2 different parts of our arm hurt. All right. So the question I have for you, why right now is there so much more research still being done outside of the US than in the US? If you can answer that in a G rating.
Well, number one, I would think that from 30,000 feet, the structures in Europe are a lot older than what they are here, right? That's first and foremost. Number two, they have probably, we're a very large country. it's a lot smaller over there. So the density of the population per structure is very different than it is here. We have, other than outside the coast. Thirdly, I think that's just been on their radar screen. For example, we can use rising damp. Rising damp is a term that we're using now. That originated, I think, there was England, right? That's rising damp. The stone foundations got wet and everything goes. I mean, that's a term that, as I understand it, started over there. So it's just an interest. I think it's an interest thing. Now, it's not that we're not studying this, the scientific community and healthcare practitioners and researchers aren't doing that. It's just that there's a lot of it all over the world. I mean, I can do any Google search and find scientific published studies here in the States very, very readily. I have a lot more than what I showed you here tonight, but I didn't want to bore people with this stuff. And by the way, I don't want to be, an expert on this. I just use this so that I can gain an understanding of what I should be looking at in that building. And even though you haven't asked the question, let me just close the loop here on this circle. In many regards, this is a very complex mathematical equation. And I don't need to be a mathematician if I understand what the formula is. And if I adhere to the formula, I can get to the answer. Even though we can't see this stuff, if we know we should be looking for actinobacteria, and there are labs out there that'll send us a kit that will be able to do that, where we can get an interpretive result. And I can look for beta glucans and I can look for VOCs. We have all that. These are tools that need to go into the toolbox.
So can I add a fourth reason? Difference between, I think, Europe and some of these Asia, some of the other countries compared to us. And I don't want to sound too political about this, but I think generally speaking, allopaths, the doctors that we deal with from the MD side of it, in America, we're more interested in dealing with symptoms than we are causes.
Yeah.
And truthfully, for most of us, if we have a headache, well, we want to lose weight, it's easier to take Ozempic than it is to stop eating and exercise.
Right.
We've got pain somewhere, we're going to take a medicine to deal with the pain rather than the symptom, rather than finding the cause. So in 2010, I was invited to speak in Los Angeles at the Alternative Therapies Conference for cancer therapies. And there were 1,700 doctors there. I was asked there to speak on the subject of mold and how we're talking about a long time ago,
Yeah.
but I was there to talk about mold and the potential health effects related to mold, that what we knew then. And what was interesting was that out of these 1,700 doctors, 85% of them were from outside of the United States. And the practices that they were using, the therapies that they were using, were not approved by the FDA in the States. And the practices that they were using were as a result of exactly what you just said, Skip, that they had been looking at studies for the cause, and then they were addressing the cause. And so with cancer, for instance, they were dealing with diet, they were dealing with hyperthermia, they were dealing with different pH diets, those sorts of things. It was just a completely different approach than in the allopath world, at least back then, was if you got cancer, let's cut it out, or let's radiate it. So I think I just think that's a factor. Like I said, I don't want to sound too political about it, but I think our approach to medicine has been completely different than what we see in Europe.
Yeah, a lot of these studies, the Finnish studies that I started off with, it's a holistic approach. Is that a Finnish study or is that normie? Is that a Finnish study or normie? It's a holistic approach, because you will not solve the problem if you don't look at the source. Right. And then you're not going to solve the problem if you think that you only have to reduce quantitatively the amount of mold spores in a containment area. You're missing the containment areas for the most part, right? It's a fraction of the total cubic amount of air in a building. And the rest of it is contaminated, and we're only focused on what's behind the plastic. So cannot pay enough homage to the sanitization protocol and high-level disinfecting cleaning to remove these particulates because, hey, look, you've interacted with Dr. Remy and Dr. Heyman, right? If you don't remove the endotoxins to the extent that you can, or the actinobacteria, that person is not going to get better. They just won't because they still are exposed. So it's a big, big, big job. And I suggest that to all my fellow colleagues out there in attendance tonight and those that will be here in the future, whether we realize it or not, we're becoming more closely aligned to high-level hospital infectious disease cleaning professionals and biotechnology decontamination professionals, period. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Because those are the two, that's what the world knows right now. That's the SpaceX of decontaminating microbial contamination. It's both of those two. One doesn't supersede the other. In combination, you will get the cleanest environment there is, period, if done properly.
Hey, Skip, I have a question here from one of our viewers tonight, and I want to put it out there to you and Doug. I'm comfortable with my own answer on this, and I want to remind you, we only have a little bit before the top of the hour, because I know this will go on for a long time, but here's the question. If a property insurance company will pay for a mold inspection and testing for an affected property, then why won't a health insurance company pay for a mold inspection and testing to evaluate someone if their home is killing them? I'm sure we could do an easy hour on that, but I think the short answer is that they're staying in their lane, they're avoiding knowing, so they have to deal with the issue?
Well, here's my personal opinion on this. Mr. President, I look forward to your response. If the EPA, which we already know, their base study said 85% of the buildings in this country have IAQ contamination. 50% had signs of water damage at the time of the assessment, and over 50% of them are contaminated. How much is that going to cost to fix? That's if that isn't the definition of Pandora's box. And then there's another reason why the EPA, CDC, NIH aren't telling people why these are unhealthy, because the magnitude of the problem exceeds the amount of money we have. So we have to be very systematic right now. We have to go about this very specifically. It's not a shotgun approach. We have to, and this is why Normie has the ability to get people to start thinking differently about how are they going to cover this from an insurance standpoint, and can we get these regulatory agencies to start saying, here's why it's unhealthy, and here's how we're going to fix it. Mr. President.
So I'll just tell you, I think the interesting thing about this is it kind of goes back to what we just talked about. It's about informing people that they have to deal with the cause, not the symptom. And unfortunately, our society often they just don't know how to exist without insurance. They expect insurance to pay for the symptom, for the problem, rather than looking at the cause and saying, look, how can I keep an environment dry? How can I make sure, using IAQ management, that my home will never get to a situation where it's water damaged? Or if it is water damaged, how do I fix it so I'm not going to have a problem forever? You know, one of the interesting things you said that I just want to underscore, Skip, and great job, by the way. Love this. This is really what we need to talk about. But probably a lot of people in the room tonight heard terms that they've not been familiar with, actinos, endotoxins, biotoxins. And what you did was you laid out, I think, a beautiful picture of the whole microbial contamination issue, much, 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 much bigger than mold. And that's the kind of thing we talk about in the NCRSI class. And I wish, you know, in a perfect world, if I were running the world, all of our Normie members would take that class so that they would understand how to utilize EnviroBiomics and Respirari and blah, 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 and at least be familiar with it. Because as you said, and I think you're exactly correct, you used the word intervention. I'm just going to put a different term on that, but the traditional remediation processes just are not effective for the majority of the people. And we've got to learn how to do our jobs better. I'm just saying.
Well, there's no, and in order to do so, you have to understand what is it that you're trying to solve. And that's this type of information, which you don't have to be Einstein to have a a working comprehensive knowledge of what this means, right? The other thing is, if we are and should, not necessarily tomorrow, but we're migrating towards this industry is going to be more closely aligned to hospital infectious disease, decontamination cleaning, biotechnology, environmental decontamination. Then if you go to the doctor, first thing you do is put the blood pressure cuff on you. That's why I said this, that example of that spore trap sample, that's my blood pressure cuff, because I can see what's there. It measures 100% of the slide, and pictorially, I can present this. Nathan, this is what you're breathing.
Yeah.
And holy cow. So that's my blood pressure. So I'm using analogies. Secondly, if I see that, I can go, you know what? This is telling me I need to take an X-ray. And what is that X-ray going to be? Envirobionics. I want to do a bacterial and endotoxin and actino test in here. And by the way, guess what? They've already said the doctor wants that. And they've already said the doctor wants an ERMI. And the doctor said they want a Hertz me too. So if the doctors are saying this, and this is what we're going at here, this is a collaboration between the patient, the doctor, the HVAC company, which I haven't even gotten into today. We stand on, but guess what? The normie trained professional, and if you go through this NCRSI, NCMP class, you're positioning yourself within the market that you're operating on, regardless of what you're doing, is to being the subject matter expert. And every single market all over the world needs somebody who understands this stuff, because the people that are affected are looking for hope. They want hope that they can talk to somebody and get the right information. And when people call us, they go, that's the closest thing I've gotten to what my doctor is telling me I got to deal with. I call all these other companies, they don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And I'll tell you what, I'm new to normie. I couldn't tell you, I got to raise the biggest normie flag I can find on the planet, because this is the knowledge entity. This is going to teach people in the masses about what this really is and what the source is, and solve the problem and not put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
We are at the top of the hour, but I do have one comment I want to repeat from somebody in the room, and then we have a hand raised for another question. But real quick, Skip, the question I asked you earlier that you responded to, one of our members kind of responded at the same time, and they responded in a way that you physically can't. They did it in 5 words. Follow the money, big pharma.
I saw that pop up on the screen. Yeah. And guess what?
And Randall's in the room, and I'm going to open up his mic here. You had a question for us. Go ahead, Randall.
Thank you.
There you go.
Great stuff. Yes, go ahead.
Well, let me just say this again, just to balance that off. Big pharma exists because we want the drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Hey, there's a confirmation happening tomorrow, perhaps. We'll see. Might make a difference.
Yes.
So my question was, but I'll make a quick comment. You talked about the client, patient, not patient for us, but the client can't see things. I will, we've already talked, some of us have already talked a little bit about the Immunolytics gravity plate concept. That my job with that, when I was talking with friends, family, and neighbors, is, hey, it's not as bad as you think. Many times it looks worse. They can see that. And now you have to help interpret what is a concern and what is not, based on what the criteria that's been developed over decades of several doctors analyzing the data. It's very visually powerful, and it's really critical to not overstate it, because people can easily jump to, oh no, this looks horrible, when it's not. And so on, but sometimes it is horrible. But my question is on the treatments, and I think you kind of touched on this, like you say, with the sanitization protocol. The things I've seen, mold spores tend to be one of the hardest things to kill. The bacteria, viruses, and lots of other stuff tend to get done earlier. So we're already focusing on the technologies and methods that will kill the stuff we haven't tested for. If we just test for some of the, we don't have to test for everything on that list, and we're still using technologies that will cleanse a whole bunch of it. But then I'm going to add some things I've heard that I'm using. I've heard, and I need to research further, that they may neutralize mycotoxins, some citrus-based things and some other things to some degree on the more powerful things. That seems like a path of us pursuing what methods can go after the whole ball of wax, even if you haven't tested for the whole ball of wax, or more of the ball of wax, I should say, that will help neutralize more of the things in the environment, even if you went after the most obvious ones. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I'm not hearing that you're saying there's a silver bullet out there, but there's, right? I get that. Well, mycotoxins are different, and microscopic maple syrup, right? They can be aerosolized, they're attached, they're sticky, they stick to surfaces. I haven't seen anything yet that's been in a reproducible way with statistical relevancy that says XYZ process solves the problem. What we do know from the hospital infectious disease decontamination cleaning is that it's multi-step, and it involves a couple of things. First and foremost, if you're not cleaning biofilms off of surfaces, you are not going to destroy the microorganisms that are growing in it. So you have to clean first in order to remove the biofilms before you even disinfect and decontaminate and sanitize. There's a very specific process. Again, I defer back to hospital infectious disease cleaning, and what I'm referring to is the difference between cleaning, sanitization, and sterilization. That's a 99.9, 99.99, 99.999 log reduction. But you can't disinfect if you haven't cleaned first, because you're not going to get those reductions. And I can prove that every which way from Sunday with an ATP monitor. So I think that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just got to see how other people do it that have been tried and true for a very long time. Every time you go into an operating room, or you know somebody that's gone into an operating room, that has been high-level decontamination, disinfected cleaning, and it does a good job. But it's manual cleaning isn't the only thing that gets you 100%. It can't. Human error.
Hey, Skip.
Can I?
Hey, Doug.
I'm sorry. Let me just add something, if I can, about testing. And Randy, I think this is to your point. We are so much further ahead of the game than we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, which is just exciting to me about where we're headed. And some of the things that we're going to be learning and finding out about how to deal with mycotoxins is really, I think, on the horizon, pretty close to us. But I can tell you, when I started selling air purifiers in 1996, I knew that ozone killed mold. We didn't have testing for it, but anecdotally, you could see it. You could put an ozone machine in a place where there was visible mold growing on the wall, and it would turn to powder, and you could wipe it off the wall. But then came testing, which was really interesting, not only on ozone, but on PCO technology, on ionization, on the DBI. All of a sudden, they were able to prove clinically and in field studies that it was dealing with Stachybotrys, which is one of the hardest molds to actually eliminate. There was actually we found that testing was done on methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, one of the hardest bacteria to kill. And so what I'm saying is we're moving in the right direction. Hang on. Eventually, the science is going to be there. And that's why it's so important for us to be constantly learning and staying in touch with, just as Skip has done tonight, looking at the studies, looking at clinical studies, looking at field studies, doing case studies. All of that is so important, because we can only know what we know, but we're learning more and more every single day. And that's just an exciting place to be.
You know, I want to quote Gavin real quick, Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner, because he said it numerous times: follow the science.
Yes.
And that's where we're really heading right now. And truthfully, and it's something that you just said, Doug, that just keeps something in my mind. You said about, killing different organisms. It's easy to kill the organisms, but you have to do it in a way where you don't kill the host, if it's a person infected by it, or create an environment that's so toxic, people can't go into it. You know, the whole concept of use bleach because it kills Ebola. Oh, if it kills Ebola, it'll take care of everything. Ebola is described as a wimpy virus or bacteria or whatever it is because it's easy to kill. But when you're dealing with envelope, non-envelope, positive, negative gram bacteria, what scares the scientists the most are spores.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
hardest thing for them to deal with. And that's
C.
what
diff.
we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are technologies out there. There are chemicals that that do eradicate all of it. Period. There are sporicidals out there that, by virtue of their definition, as for example, cold sterilants. I'm not going to go down that. By virtue of the definition, U.S. Pharmacopoeia 1072, a sterilant is an agent that destroys all forms of microbial life and their spores in either its liquid or vapor format. But the problem is, right, endotoxins are a fragment of that bacterial wall. And if you kill it and you leave it in the environment, we all know now, after today, everybody's smarter because I did a great job tonight showing that if it was on the surface, it got in the air, it goes back on the floor, you walk past the floor, it goes back and you breathe it, you've left a contaminant in there. That's why this is so difficult. It is very meticulous. It has to be done in a certain way. You can't go in there with a rag and just wipe stuff off. It has to be methodical, meticulous, and technique dependent. Anyway.
So Doug, how do we raise his enthusiasm? How do we get him more engaged in this discussion?
One of the things I
Yeah,
love
you
about
did a great
Skip,
job.
he shares our passion, and I just think it's a phenomenal opportunity that we have to change the lives of millions of people by creating cleaner, safer, healthier environments. I just wish more of our Normie members would get on board and, you know, get beyond the basic class and start taking some advanced classes. It's not about money as much as it is about education and staying up with the science. Because if you don't, you'll be left behind, right, Skip?
Yeah, you're already it's already past you. If you, for those of you out there that have witnessed some of this tonight, if you elect not to do this, somebody in your market is going to know this.
Yeah.
And you are going to be replaced. This is where it's going.
Yeah.
Doug, I talked right before I knew who Mr. President was. I've been talking about this in my marketplace for 5 years. People thought I was nuts. They thought I was crazy. Custer, I have more arrows in my back than you can possibly imagine. Guess what? We're here now.
Yeah.
5 years.
That's right. We are.
If you don't know this stuff, not to recite it verbatim, but to have a comfortable working understanding of the complexities of the contaminants in a water damaged building or structure, somebody in your marketplace is going to know it, and they're going to be the go-to.
Well, what you did tonight, Skip, was help take the people here in this room or anybody else that's watching this past the I've witnessed the bee sting and see a reaction.
Yeah.
Now they know there's other things they can't see causing the same type of reaction.
Yeah, I know we've gone really long. Let me just leave it at this. When I share what I just talked about tonight to people who say, I'm so sick, and then after we do the sanitization protocol in its entirety, if it was a remediation, we did that appropriately, but we left the house in as microbially decontaminated state as we possibly could, they go, I feel so much better. And I say, do you want to know why? Because here's all the testing. And you know what they say? No, I don't need to know why. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Some of them do, but you know, that's it. I mean,
Right.
we're a hell of a lot more aligned. Hospital infectious disease, biotechnology, than we ever possibly could have imagined. And it all
Absolutely.
started with what Normie started 20 years ago, almost 21 years ago.
Skip, thank you again. Doug, anything else?
Thanks, Skip. Great job, man.
Okay, everybody. One more time. I am back here live at the Experience Trade Show again, and I have Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner with us. from GBAC and ISSA. I think it's the easiest way to describe it.
We've got a lot of acronyms there.
Yes,
haven't
we do. Yes, lots of initials. Hey, one of the things I really want to tell you most about this interview is I get to stop for a few minutes. We have been talking to so many people today and doing so many things. It's been a very, very busy show the last 2 days.
The energy level at the experience here in Las Vegas has just been amazing. But the people that have come here looking for ways to improve, people have come here with looking for solutions, people are looking for collaboration. I was just in a conversation a minute ago where someone said, well, I tried this, it didn't work the way I was expected. And someone else in the audience went, oh, I do it this way. And suddenly you've got this translation, this sharing of information that's going to improve our industry and improve their businesses because they came to the experience. It's just phenomenal.
Well, you did a talk this morning and it was a newer concept than a lot of people are familiar with. And that's all I've been getting all day long. People coming up to say, hey, you were in the interview. What was that he was talking about? Do you have any information? I said, no, you're going to talk to Gavin yourself. Let him explain this and get a training course on it.
I think what we're talking about, Lance, is really radical. It's radical in a way that if people can understand that harmful, detrimental germs like bacteria, mold, yeast, don't live in isolation. They live in cities of microorganisms. They live in communities. And those cities of microorganisms are called biofilms. But our whole approach to remediation, restoration, cleaning has been one bacteria at a time. The way that we look at our cleaning products and our disinfectants, where we should be more focused on how does a community of bacteria survive on a surface? How do they help each other? And how does that make our job more challenging? And what processes and products and tools and equipment do we use to create a healthier and safe environment? But more importantly, show it by data, show it by information.
One of the conversations I had with somebody after your talk was they were asking about, well, I'm not quite sure. About seeing a bacteria in a city. And I said, well, look at it this way. Your eyes aren't good enough to see a bacteria. When you see something growing there, that's a city of bacteria.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and this is really important that bacteria will grow on surfaces and it's colorless, it's invisible, and there might be 3 to 4 cell layers thick, and we won't see that. But in a biofilm, the different types of bacteria work together and they produce a protective covering. So it's a little bit like a building with scaffolding all around the building, but the scaffolding is solid. It's all filled in and it protects the inside of the building. So imagine that these bacteria do this protective covering. It's called EPS. And that protects the bacteria inside, which makes it more challenging, more difficult for the disinfectant or the clean product to actually get into those into the harmful bacteria and kill them. And we find that because we're not focusing on that, we tend to go back and go, oh, I removed this, or I thought I cleaned it, but now the problem's even worse, or it came back. And so we've got to actually change our processes, look at it, revisit our products and tools, and look at this more as we are dealing with cities of microorganisms, not just 1 or 2.
Well, you had mentioned this morning something that really I found astounding, that some of the things that we use to treat the biological contaminants, the bacteria in this case, kill the bacteria, but it gets replaced by a different type of bacteria that could be worse.
Yeah, so there's people like Greg Whiteley in Australia, Stephanie Dancer in Scotland, who've been researching biofilms for years. And I want to emphasize, biofilms been known in so many other industries. We'll take all those lessons learned from other industries and we'll bring them into our industry. Mm-hmm. But the importance is that with this protective layer, when you remove, say, use a disinfectant, research has shown if you remove harmful bacteria with a disinfectant, then when they come back, it's more likely to get more harmful bacteria. If you use a probiotic product, or if you use an enzyme cleaner, or even if you just use soap and water like just a detergent, we find that when you remove the harmful bacteria, non-harmful, so environmental bacteria come in and take over that space. So it means that yes, you've still got bacteria on the surface, but they're beneficial bacteria. They're environmental bacteria that are not harmful.
It's like within your digestive system, there's good bacteria and bad bacteria. And
Correct.
you need the good bacteria.
Yeah, and we need to appreciate from our industry that there is good bacteria. So we see biofilms being used for waste management. We see biofilms being used in the food production industry, all for good purposes.
Septic systems.
Correct.
Okay. Well, you had mentioned about the scaffolding around protecting the bacteria. Is that like positive and negative gram bacteria, or is that something in addition to what you're talking about?
Yeah, so there is that definition between the different types of bacteria. What we find in a biofilm, we can get lots of different species of bacteria. We can find that there is, certain species like a bacillus, which secretes like a protein, a polysaccharide, a peptide, different products that then protect Staphylococcus aureus. And we know that Staphylococcus aureus causes skin infections, for example.
MRSA you're talking about.
Yeah. So drug-resistant type Staph aureus. But what we're finding through research, and we've known this for a while, that some bacteria work together with Staphylococcus aureus and protect it. And so we have to understand that when we pick up a cleaning product or a disinfectant, and we always say, read the label, and it says effective against one bacteria. In the real world, that's not real.
Right.
In the real world, those bacteria are living as a colony, as a biofilm. And so we want to help work with our manufacturers to start producing product that actually works on this city of microorganisms.
Do they use anything like an antibiotic to treat these biofilms?
That's a great question. So a lot of the drug-resistant germs that we see in hospitals have led through antibiotic use, even cleaning product use. And so biofilms actually lead to being resistant, making the antibiotics less effective. So it's really important as we try to target, what areas do we target? As we target the cell wall, for example, as we target the replication, multiplication, growth areas of the bacteria. So it's really important that a lot of people who work in, say, hospitals understand this. A lot of people that work in the food industry understand this. Those that work maybe in the nuclear industry, we get biofilms, pipes, the plumbers, you see biofilms build up on pipes. They understand that there is ways of removing those bacteria. But even in the medical world, we understand that biofilms can lead to greater antibiotic resistance, and that's a big problem.
So with this removal, like you're talking about pipes, if you remove that sludge that's in there, what do you do with it not to contaminate something else?
Yeah, great question, Lance. So let's go back to our definition of cleaning. And everyone's got to be clear on this. It's what makes us professional, what makes us essential as an industry is that we know how to remove. So cleaning is the process of removing. The next step in that process is disposing of what you've just removed in a way that's safe. And that's what makes us professional, where other people might remove it and don't know how to dispose of it. So yeah, when you get buildup of a biofilm in a pipe on a surface, yes, we've got to remove it, but we've also got to know how to dispose of it safely.
Is there any regulations on that, like there is on asbestos and lead, that you can't just throw it out or send it to a dump?
It's a good question. I work a lot in high consequence diseases. So if I'm dealing with an Ebola outbreak, yes, there are rules. There are regulations. There are requirements of what we can do and can't do with Ebola waste, with Ebola vomit and diarrhea as we clean that up. Yes. So we have to, so it's really important. Are those rules well known? I don't think they are. I think this is an opportunity for education, awareness, and training to help people be more professional.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned septic systems earlier, there's all kinds of bacteria down there growing, and it's going into the ground. It can seep into well water and stuff like that. Is that a concern when you try to clean these systems out?
Yeah, it is. It is. So we know that the chemicals we use, we know the germs that we're removing can actually, if we don't do this properly, can get into other systems. And so it's so important. We know that within our industry, cross-contamination is a big issue.
Yeah.
We can use the same cleaning cloth, whether it be a microfiber or a cotton rag or a mop, and if we don't use it properly, we can spread it to other rooms. And one one of the big cases that I investigated a few years ago was a norovirus outbreak in a hotel, and it affected, 350 people got sick at 9 different events over a 30-day period. And what was the problem? A dirty vacuum cleaner
Spreading it from one place to another.
every day. And that kept the outbreak going. And that was a norovirus outbreak.
Amazing. Well, it was educational, and everybody left talking about that presentation this morning. It was looking at the industry differently, shaking it up, definitely.
I think you're right, Lance. And it's what we're trying to do is trying to create opportunities. And so I talked a lot about how clean is a locker room, and how does the indoor air quality in a locker room, as well as what's on the surfaces, how dirty the surfaces are or how clean the surfaces are, and how does that affect performance of athletes. And that's known. There's been science, there's been research done on that. And then how do we, here in our industry, work with the professional athletes, college athletes, high school athletes, to ensure that we get them at their peak performance, because we, again, focus on cleaning for health, but we focus on indoor air quality as well as surfaces.
So I can see the professional gambling industry getting involved in the health of the athletes' indoor air quality.
Yeah, really important, Lance. There's a couple of studies out there that we know that have, they've been looked at Major League Baseball pitchers, quarterbacks from the NFL, and how that the quality of the air in the locker room, in their environment, actually affects their reaction rates, for example. That's known. I was working with a professional football team just recently, and I was talking to the coaches and the players about injuries. And they said, oh, yeah, we get cuts, abrasions, and they don't heal. And I said, well, that's a biofilm problem. The biofilm was formed on that burn, that injury on your leg, and it doesn't heal. And there's been some well-published articles where football players have taken months, even years to heal. And what it was interesting, they thought it was the playing field, and went, no, it's not. It might be, but what more importantly, it's this environment here in the locker room, the gymnasium, the hot tub, the cold tub that keeps reinfecting, that keeps that infection cycle going.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing stuff.
Which I hope is opportunities. I hope people can see this as, if we start doing what other industries are doing when it comes to biofilm. So like the food industry, dairy farms, if you start looking at biofilm in the way they have those conversations in hospitals, for example, on medical equipment, if we take those lessons learned, apply them to our industry, and put that in a way that, yes, we can increase performance of professional athletes, we can create safer and healthier indoor spaces, because we understand how microorganisms, how germs live in the environment.
So slightly off topic, when you deal with mold, does that exist in the same biofilm environment as bacteria?
Yes, it does. Yes. Yeah. So I want to emphasize biofilms can occur in both wet or moist environments, but also dry environments. And so when we look at mold, and I think, I was just asked about some social media postings and what my opinion was on the way that they were addressing mold. And I said, yeah, I appreciate they're trying, but what they're not doing is cleaning the mold, removing the mold based on science, or what we know, what Normie knows, what you teach in the Normie courses. And wouldn't it be great if we could take that passion, that enthusiasm of the social media, the TikTok people, and actually give them a solution that's known to be proven by science to work, because they're trying to educate a greater audience, and they're doing their best, but not everything they're doing is 100% correct.
And unfortunately, some of the people putting information out there aren't putting out, if not all of the correct information, a slanted view of the information to make sales and for other reasons. And that's unfortunate.
It is, but it's what makes our industry so special, because we deal with passionate people. And when you have passionate, enthusiastic people, you have opinions. And unfortunately, some of those opinions, even in the year of 2024, are still, not just decades old, but centuries old. That's last year's that was the information we had in the 1800s. We don't do that now. We clean based on data, based on science, based on all those lessons learned, based on all the research and development that's gone into our industry. And we do it because this is what we know. This is what we know to do. And and so important that as professionals, we translate and share that information. So those influencers out there are wonderful, but what we want them is to say, this is what works. Get everyone to do this.
Informed influencers
That's-
are what we want.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and
Yep.
not somebody just because it's a hot topic, running with it, the shock jocks, as you would call them.
Yep.
From radio. It's really people that are informed, being the influencers for the right reason.
And that's a really good point, because mold can be everywhere.
Yep.
And it's not a disaster. It's not a catastrophe. It's not an emergency. It's giving the people the right knowledge, tools, and equipment to address mold themselves so they do it safely, and they create safer indoor spaces for their families and their loved ones.
Absolutely. Well, I know I've been talking since about 8 o'clock this morning.
I-
I think you have too.
I am just so impressed that here in Las Vegas, I had the experience that the level of energy is pretty high.
Oh, very
Um,
high.
The level of
Sure.
engagement and the level of sharing of information has been fantastic. Yeah, I don't think from probably 8 o'clock this morning till whatever time it is this afternoon, it's been constant conversation. It's been wonderful.
It is nonstop. I mean, we have a sign up board here for people that want to do interviews, and sometimes you run over a few minutes and they're waiting, tapping their foot, is it my turn yet? And we get there as fast as we can.
And I think that's what's so important, Normie, from an example of what Normie does as an organization, what ISSA does as an organization. We take these wonderful people and we try to form functional teams.
Teams is a key word.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's going to take. Not one person, not one company is going to fix the problems that we have with our environment.
It is. It's going to take a team, and the thing is, we can do that. I'm very confident that we have, we amongst us, we have the potential, the opportunity to get really good people together to form functional teams that go back to cleaning and ensuring that what we do is professional, makes our industry essential, and it elevates where we should be in society, in the community, in discussions. Because if we don't do our job, then everyone complains. If we do our job, we don't get recognized. And that's what we need to change.
I think one of the biggest problems our industry has is we're dealing with microscopic entities. And people, if they don't see it, smell it, taste it, or hear it, it doesn't exist until they get sick from it. It's not like smog. It's not something you smell in the air. And that's really, I think, the hardest thing that we have to overcome.
And that's a great point, Lance. If you're seeing the bacteria, if you're seeing the mold, if you can smell it, if you're getting impacted by it, then it's too late.
But it's got your interest,
Yeah.
or your attention at the very least.
Yeah. And that puts us in the game of prevention. How do you sell prevention?
Yeah. From something you can't see.
Correct.
I look forward to finding the answer on that with you.
We are going to work together, and I think that as we do that, and especially with the people we've talked to here in Vegas at the experience, as long as we take that team approach, we're going to have a significant impact, and we're going to do great things.
Absolutely. Just as a tease, I just want to throw out a website, NormiPro, NORMIPRO, ETF, environmentaltaskforce.org. Keep an eye on that site. A lot more coming.
Oh, I think it's a wonderful idea, Lance. It's going to be brilliant.
I thank you for your time. We'll do this, I'm sure, quite a bit more as we go on over the next few months. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's important that if anyone needs help, reach out to us. That's what we're here to do.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lance.
Welcome to episode 23 of Trade Talks, Unlocking the Experience. My name is Kayla McGowan. I'm R&R's editor-in-chief and responsible for the educational tracks at The Experience. Today, my special guest is a very special friend of mine, former publisher and lifelong Ohio native. Today's special guest is Michael Balzano. Not only is he a native, he's an avid sports fan, a graduate of Kent State, and now resides in Naples, Florida. Please welcome Michael Balzano.
Hey, Kayla, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Welcome.
Good. Thank you. I love what you've done with the place. It looks great. We had that crazy ass song still as the opening, which is great. It's a set I know and love, and I'm so happy that you're resurrecting this podcast, which meant so much to me. Thank you.
You are so welcome. I don't know if I'm going to be able to follow in your footsteps. You set expectations there with the fun facts, the music, your personality. So I'm excited to have you as the first guest. I think this is very much deserved, and no other way I'd want to start this podcast series for the upcoming year.
Well, thank you very much. It was, we started this because we as everybody knows, BNP Media purchased the experience a few years ago. And I thought, well, we're not really marrying R&R in the event. We got to find some way individually to do it. And what I found instantly was, and I've said this on a few other podcasts, everybody that was on this show, all the restoration leaders, all the cleaning leaders, marketing leaders, I asked them, why did you get in the industry? And every one of them said, I wanted to help people. And it always stuck with me. And I thought, well, what a cool industry this is. It's kind of beautiful when you think about it, Kayla, right?
It really is. I think it really truly takes special people, right? We are helping people on a regular basis. I like to call ourselves the first responders of our industry, right? Because we're oftentimes there in times of crisis. And just meeting with everybody and hearing their story is so beautiful, because you don't know. You see people at face value. Most times you've met them in the middle of their career, and you just think, wow, they've been here for 20, 30 years. And that's not necessarily the case. So, looking back at this and really talking about all the people we have and, who's part of who are part of the programs and everything like that, who do you think had the most memorable intro to the industry?
What do you mean? I mean, as far as for me,
as your guest, as the guest that you've had on this, like who was the most unique, maybe they just happened to stumble upon it. Maybe they actually had a disaster themselves, right?
Yeah, they all had. I started asking questions too of everybody about halfway through, saying, tell me something unique about yourself that no one would know. And some of the answers were amazing. But as far as interviews go, I mean, first thing that comes to mind is Ed Cross was great. He always is, and everybody knows he was a rocker and a drummer. And he yelled at me because I called him a percussionist. He was, I'm a drummer, man. I'm not a percussionist. All right. Easy.
Very proper.
Yes. So he was fun. I get some good stories about Barry Costa right off the bat. Was amazing. He well, maybe in a little bit we'll talk about that, because I had something specifically he said that I still think about to this day. And it's just every one of them. And I think that maybe not just this industry, but any industry in general, you peel back the onion a little bit. It's kind of cool. All the lives these people have had in the past and how they've somehow wound up here. Randy Gandara, of course, was a Michael Jackson impersonator. Like, what? Where did that come from? And now he's doing great things with Goldmore and our friends from Normie, and it goes on and on. Even was fortunate to talk to Tag Henderson, who's the CEO of our company, BNP Media, because it's funny. The sale was almost 3 years ago now, and still people don't realize that BNP owns the experience. I said, hey, boss, would you mind coming on? And I was happy and terrified when he said, yeah, sure, you can interview me. Like, oh, crap. All right, great.
You're like, no, wait, I was hoping you would say no.
No, I don't have time for that, Mike. Okay, I understand, sir. But he was amazing. Our guy, it's a family-run organization, almost 100 years old. And I think the title of that episode was the family media company purchased the family event of the restoration industry. And, I learned so much from so many people. I always like to say I'm not the new Larry Cooper. And Larry got mad at me for saying that until I explained to him. I go, no, man, what I mean is, for a number of reasons, most importantly, you've been in the cleaning and restoration industry for 30 years. I've been in B2B media for 30 years, but I don't know anything about this. When I first walked in, I know some now, but let's get the people who know what they're talking about on here. And if you're going to come to me about truck mounts and stuff, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That at the time. So I took this as a learning opportunity. I didn't pretend I was real technical with the people, because I couldn't be. And we learned about them. And as you're finding out, I'm going to let you talk in a minute. As you're finding out right now, people love talking about themselves, and it just kind of flows. And that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I'm so happy you're doing this. By the way, this is we forgot. I'm so excited about starting. This is our Christmas episode.
Yes.
Your background looks great. I got my red Christmas jacket on, and I wish everybody a Merry Christmas. So now I'll shut up.
Yeah. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everybody. Honestly, I think we knew this was going to be a very talkative episode. We are both very social people. We love to talk, and working together is always a great time. But I think there's so much to learn about all of this. What was the reasoning or motivation to have trade talks? I think that's really important for people to understand as well.
Well, R&R is restoration and remediation. And I tried to say, okay, we need to boost our cleaning. We need to boost our cleaning because we own the experience now. And it's just, we were R&R for so long. It just felt like a round peg in a square hole, whatever the expression is. And let's just be who we are. We're good friends with so many cleaning organizations and trade shows. Let's just let them be great at that. But we definitely need a bridge to the show. And I felt that this was a good thing. Our editor at the time was doing, as you are now, Ask the Experts and all sorts of different videos. And we have some great people like Ben Riccardi. I'm not going to mention any names. A lot of great contributors sending their videos in. Yeah. But I said, I could be the one, since I'm the publisher, even though editors are supposed to do this, I could be the one that we're supposed to be as the business people. I'm the one guy that kind of is on both sides of this. I'd be the one to do this. I'm happy to try. I'll be the guinea pig. And it worked out. And it worked out great, I think.
I think you did a great job. I think also, there's nerves and anxiety about, hosting podcasts, especially when we're talking to industry experts. It can be a little intimidating. But I think the beautiful thing with the positions you and I hold is we know we have so much to learn, right? I've been in the industry for quite some time, but I feel like I still learn. I too am not a very technical person. I know the who's and I know, situational things and things like that. But I think there's just so much for people to offer. And it's a great thing to use to bridge the gap. I think, speaking of Ask the Expert, I have a couple episodes coming up, one of which I talked to one of our industry's leading inspectors, and we talk about how, inspection, cleaning, restoration, health, and safety. I mean, all the things actually marry. And that's what the experience is all about. Though BMP Media owns it and R&R has a very heavy hand in the sessions, that's where we come in, right? We link all of the sub-industries to the main industry, right? And I think it's a beautiful thing, and it gives people the opportunity, like you said, to talk about themselves because, one, if you're coming to the experience for the first time or the 100th time, you may make your decision on what sessions you're going to go to based on what you know about these people, right?
Who are you? All right, you could talk to me about drying. You can talk to me about all that stuff. And that's that we need to know that. That's the reason for our brand and the other brands. But who are you? Let's figure out, let's crack the code a little bit. I learned this year a lot. I think this might be a little bit arrogant, but I'm going to go for it anyway. I think that on the political landscape, and as everybody, we're so divided and everything. But if you didn't know who the other guy was voting for, chances are we'd be best friends, man. I find that out all the time. And it's just, if it's just that one thing, and it's an important thing, yes, but let's get past that and get back to just finding out what these people are really about and move on from there. And I think that I was happy that we were able to get a lot of the people who are leaders of the experience in our industry to kind of open up and say a bunch of silly things and fun things. And it was great. I mean, several of them, my friend Amanda Stichter, as well as Doug Hoffman from Normie recorded records. Like what?
Yeah.
Records, yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
you just don't know. And I think the cool thing about this is, if you look at the industry collectively and people for just that, what they're great at, right? You don't really know people's backstory unless you know them on a personal level. And though a lot of people on a personal level, there's always that extra layer of, you don't really know this person. Like you kind of do, but you really don't, and I think that's the one thing that's really cool. So speaking of unique things, what's one unique thing about you?
Oh, wow. You're right at it. Okay.
I mean, you're in the hot seat now.
I was waiting for the end. I was calm. That's a good interviewing tactic. You caught me off guard. Oh, crap. Okay. When I went out of high school, you know what? People aren't going to be that surprised if you really think about it with this, but when I graduated from high school, I didn't go to college. I didn't go into a trade or start a cleaning business or restoration, which I probably, looking back, any of those would have been better choices than me. I was a DJ. I was a DJ on the air and in clubs for a while, for several years. You have a
radio voice, I will say. I could totally see that. Not going to lie to you.
It was fun. I started out in the middle of the fun. You get what you can get when you're starting out. I was making about $3 an hour overnight on a country station. And I'm not a country fan then or now. And I was playing like Willie Nelson records and crap in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. But it was fun. It was just fun. It was interesting and sometimes you look back and think, man, I wish I'd have stuck it out, but it was a money thing and went. incredible stories, nutty stories. I was able to eventually decided to go back to school and went to Kent State. And actually the DJing in the bars put myself through that. So that helped
Isn't
out
that interesting?
financially. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
do you still have a love for, spinning records? Have you done it recently?
No, that's not even a thing anymore. But I mean, it's spun into, as far as the radio kind. Now it's things like this, podcasting and whatnot, and it emerges and evolves and whatnot. But everybody loves music. I do too. But yeah, I remember distinctly when I was about 19 at a bar. I used to work for when I was in the club scene. I worked for a company who put us at different bars, okay, to do it. And one of them was just the flat out mob bars, a mafia bar, right? I was just a little kid. They had the same vowel on the end of my name that they did. Not to besmirch my Italian friends, but it was. I went up to the guy's office. We talked to new DJ, and he came up and he had a big gun right there on the table in the middle of us. He said, "I want you to play this and this and this." I said, "You got it."
Yeah, I am not going to say no. If you were wondering,
Yes, sir.
I will say yes to whatever you would like.
I mean, in nightclubs, anybody who's been a bartender or anything, meet some interesting folks at those clubs. So anyway, it was fun, and eventually I got into sales. So that's what led us to here.
Yeah. So how did you get into sales?
Well, I mean, I graduated from Kent State, and I had a couple. It was a short time in some medical sales, and a short time in a couple other things. And finally, a good friend of mine was a big salesperson at a B2B media company in Cleveland called Advanced Star Communications. He goes, "Mike, why don't you quit messing around and come into, advertising sales?" Like, oh, that seems kind of cheesy,
Yeah.
And that was 1997. I started with Advanced Star. Instantly met a young lady named Darlene Mattoon, a couple of rows away from me. People are looking ahead at this, who that is.
Yeah.
And I remember I went over, I thought she kept trying to use my phone in my office. And I was like, yeah, okay, she must be, she's a couple of years older than me, not much. And I was like, oh, she's dressed real sharp. She must be a manager or something. She happened to be just a rep like me. And I would go over there and kind of accidentally walk by her. I think she was good looking too. I thought. So I'd accidentally go by her office at lunch. "Oh, Darlene, I know you're here. You mind if I come in and talk?" And blah, blah, blah. And I asked her out, and she said no, because we work together. And they said, "Okay, well, I'll pick you up at 8," which you can't do now. I'd probably be good at HR.
I was going to say red flag everywhere.
But in 97, it was a lot looser. And
Yeah.
she said yes. And she'll hate me for telling this story, but the first thing we went on a date to, it was a movie. I can't remember the movie. It was a bad movie. And we also went to Houlihan's. And we saw the movie, then we went out to dinner, and I planned one on her. And she instantly, and I'm not saying, look, I don't brag about my prowess in kissing, but I planned one on her, and she instantly walked through an emergency exit and set the alarm off. So I think it was a good kiss.
Perfect. I was going to say, hey, it was a celebratory walkout alarm sound.
It was. We got married a couple years later. We're still now. Everybody knows she's been with R&R on and off for a long time, and
Yeah.
I'm very lucky to be with her still to this day. So, two stories.
Yeah,
in one.
I was going to say, you guys are definitely two peas in a pod. Definitely, I will definitely say. And that's what I love about, you guys. I've known you guys for quite some time, and being able to work along one another and just build another relationship, outside of just, kind of vendor relationship. It's a lot different when we're on the same team. I think it's so cool. It's just full circle moment, right? And I didn't know that about you. I know you guys are married and everything, but I didn't know your whole background. And I think that that's so cool. I too met my husband at work, so I totally get it. And I think there's like some wild stat, like 70 or 80% of people actually meet their spouse at work. But I think it's a good way to actually see somebody for who they are, their work ethic, how they put themselves together. Do they show up to work? Do they not show up to work? So I think it's a really beautiful thing at the end of the day,
Yeah, I understand why companies don't want fraternization at work. I get it completely. When I was in the need for a sales rep for R&R a couple of years ago, I said, well, I'll just, when I became publisher, I'll just get Darlene. And our HR was like, no. What's the matter with you? You can't do that. And I get it.
You're like, I get it now.
For 30 off and on for like 20 years. We're not normal in a lot of ways, but definitely in this. And then finally they saw what we saw, and I'm glad they let me bring her back.
Yeah,
So-
that's awesome. Yeah, that's so awesome. So we've learned a lot about you. Now let's
Yes.
learn a little bit about the experience. Let's share about the experience. So I know you mentioned that a family business purchased a family business, but why?
I think I became a publisher just almost instantly. One of the first things Sarah Harding, my old publisher, said, "Hey, there's this guy Larry Cooper. He wants to. You got to meet him. He owns these shows called The Experience." Okay, we went on the call, and Larry said, "Hey, he kind of brought it up. I'm thinking about moving on, retiring, or from this." And started. I was like, "Wow, I didn't expect that." And we just. I think that I took that information. Sarah and I took the information to our corporate, and they worked on it for a long time, and finally decided to pull the trigger. The reason was to marry. I believe that as we move ahead, and it's almost 2025, we know that we all know that you just evolves. Everything evolves, definitely in B2B media.
Yeah.
I think the print medium was a blast, and everybody loved reading magazines, and it's great, but it's just not where we're going. Everything's digital now, everything's moving on. And BNP made the decision to just the future, the model for BNP is a brand, a digital brand, and an event to back it up. And they saw that this was an excellent brand, an excellent event or events to tie in with R&R. And it made sense. I mean, it was available. It was the show in Las Vegas is still the largest show every year, as far as attendance and everything. So that's why it was done. And a lot of sweat and tears the last couple of years trying to turn this around, turn it over, I should say. But I'm happy they did it. I wouldn't trade it for anything the last few years.
I would definitely say too, right? Evolution, everything evolves over time. And I think even when Larry and his family had the show, right, it evolved over time. And now that it's a BNP event, it will evolve too. Some of the same key pieces will stay, right? Like the hands-on sessions, the in-court, class sessions, tracks occasionally, and I think we will evolve it over time because the industry is evolving. That's the other thing, right? The industry drives how our event acts, feels, and looks at the end of the day, because that's who the event's for. And I think it's cool going from family to family because there's just a different meaning and a different drive, around that. Because anybody could have purchased it at the end of the day, right? Anybody could have purchased it.
Yeah. My hat's off to the Henderson family and our company for pulling the trigger. And it wasn't $20 either. There was a nice amount of money they spent on this. So I think it was worth it, and I'm glad they did. If somebody asked me, what is a lot of people ask me what's different between spring and fall. Everybody asks that, but I prefer to talk about what sets the whole experience apart. And it's just the sheer dense amount of content we provide. It's just so many tracks, so many sessions, so many speakers. Restoration Pavilion, Cleaning Pavilion, they have sessions with Lisa Lavender and Sean Bission doing their thing back there. I've been to a bunch of trade shows in our industry. They're all great. I'm not going to badmouth any of them because I always have a great time and learn a lot when I go. We have so much more. We have so much more content than all of them, not combined, but all of them. And that's simply what sets it apart. If you want to learn something, if you want to get your hands dirty and figure out how to do this and that, you go to the experience. If you want to learn at a higher level how we're going to help my business grow by doing better marketing and business management, go to the experience. And I think that that's always going to be that way.
Yeah, I definitely think too, the beauty of all of this is every event has something to offer, right? Yeah. And just like you said, every event has pros and cons and all of that. But I think the beauty of what we do is what you just said. There is a variety of educational opportunities in session. Not only are we in the classroom setting, we're actually hands-on, right? You get that opportunity to watch, learn, and maybe even participate in some hands-on stuff, right? I think that's the other thing. Some people learn by having hands-on opportunities, and that's how connections are made too, right? I think the name is the experience, and we want you to have a great experience, right? It's all about your experience when you're attending.
Yeah. I'm gonna go back to a question you asked about 15 minutes ago, but it's fitting here too. So when I went to the experience in September 2023, we weren't taking it over as Larry's last event, being in charge. We were there, we owned it, but they were running it. And I was sitting in the team room, and Barry Costa, the legendary Barry Costa, walks in, and He had about a 2x2 carpet rug sample with a bunch of fake dog poop on it. Larry, Barry, you're so funny. Where'd you get that fake dog poop? He goes, this is my dog's poop. What do you mean? With Barry, he's walking around. And then you think about it, actually, he's going to do a session on cleaning your rugs, and that's, pets do
It
that.
happens. Yeah.
Right. But so he was the second guest on Unlocking the Experience at Trade Talks almost a year ago to the day right now. And we had him on, and I said, hey, you have any interesting experience stories you got for me? Because I was hoping he'd say something. I would say, I'll tell you what my favorite experience story was. I was talking about the poop, right?
Yeah.
It was a setup. But Barry went on to say, and I'm sure he doesn't mind. This is public. So he doesn't mind me saying this. He goes, no, when I do have a very good experience. This is about 15 years ago. His child, who was younger, got cancer and died. And they went to Larry, to his credit, gave him an agenda spot on the agenda, a speaking spot. And Barry came out and did the entire eulogy he did at the funeral for that. And he said, I don't know if any other show would allowed me to do that, but the experience did. And then I realized that we all have our families. This is Barry talking. We all have our families, but the experience and the people that come to the experience, this industry, those are my family too. And I don't want to not see them 2 times a year. I want to see them every time I get. And I was like, I was really.
It's so sad. It's so heartwarming at the same day. Yeah.
I tell you this, I didn't tell my stupid poop joke. I know that after that, but I mean,
you're like, I cannot follow that with that. Gosh.
But he hit the nail right on the head, and that's it. And that's the family thing, the aspect of this. And everybody knows each other, and everybody comes, and it's a big party. We have a good time. And I think that is one thing that this will always be about. We don't charge millions of dollars to buy a booth. The rates are reasonable. The rates are this and that. So we don't have a bunch of flashy stuff. But we have a party. It's fun, and it's a good time, and people learn stuff. And at the end of the day, I think that's the most important thing when you're going to business or living. You got to keep learning, right, Kayla?
Yeah, 100%. And I think you said it best. We do have show time, we do have education, we do have a party, but most importantly, that party celebrates everybody in the industry, right? I think we give away some fun awards both in the spring and the fall, right? There's some key awards. Women in Restoration will be awarded at the Spring Experience in Punta Gorda. So Punta Gorda, back in Florida. Oh, I rhymed. Yep. Definitely not a rapper by any means. But why should somebody come to the show in Punta Gorda?
Well, we did I'm working with you to get started on the agenda this year. And I'm assisting you. Is what I'm doing. You did a great job. And by the way, is another Florida thing. Yeah, it sounds like Punta Gorda. You think it's Punta Gorda because Florida, and I'm a Floridian, so I can make fun of us.
Yeah.
So come to Punta Gorda because this is good. I tell you what, this is a new session. We have 3 tracks this time. It's going to be condensed, and it's going to be targeted on nothing but education. Get down here. It's about a half-hour flight drive from Fort Myers Airport, where I fly into all the time. It's as we discussed a few minutes ago. You're not going to get the education anywhere else as you're going to get at this event right now. And that goes for all experience events, but this one's going to be even more micro and targeted, which is exciting.
Well, I was going to say too, I think that's the beauty of this, right? It's very focused. We know what's going on in the industry. We know where the pain points are in the industry, and we have the ability to capitalize on that and help one another. And not only that, we know that things evolve. And so we're able to learn from everybody who attends the experience. Like, hey, we need to have more of this, or hey, this was great. Maybe it should be a longer session. I think that's the other thing that really differentiates us as well. It's a very personal experience. We're able to take the feedback. And of course, that's how we evolve. That's how we make the event worthwhile, worth attending. And again, evolution. And not to mention, it's a very family-friendly spot, right? It's going to be a beautiful time of the year. Spring break might even be falling around that time, and I want to circle back to, you said it's Punta Gorda, and I think that's one of those things. Wherever you live, right? I live in Nevada. When people say Nevada, people here go absolutely bonkers, but again, in the South, I think there's a Nevada, Missouri, if I'm not mistaken. I lived in Arkansas, but that's how they pronounce it. Nevada. It's not Nevada. Yeah. So I think, everybody has their quirks, and I have been saying Punta Gorda because, well, I'm from the West Coast. So, that's how we enunciate here.
Moved to Punta Cana for vacation.
Right.
That's my hometown making fun of Florida thing. I think that speaking of Florida, though, early April is beautiful, beautiful. The snowbirds tend to leave just after Easter. So April, it's no longer chilly. Look, today it's 52 degrees here. Okay. I talked to a friend of mine in Chicago this morning. It was 8. She doesn't want to hear about it, but it's for here. It's chilly. That's why everybody comes down in the winter. It's mild and nice. April, it starts ticking up again. It'll be in the 80s. It'll be sunny. It won't be a million degrees like July, but it'll be just right. And if you want to get up there with the kids and come down and have a good time, this is a place. We have, I think, 4 hotels on the rotation for to stay with too. All nice, all pretty new. 3 of them within walking distance of the convention center. One of them is the fabulous Sunseeker Resort, which is just over the bridge, a mile away. And you could maybe parlay it into a vacation too with the family if you'd like.
I was gonna say, you just got to stay there recently, right? And it was beautiful. The experience was great. I think, you sent me great pictures of, hey, this is where we're gonna be. I can see it from where I am, and I think, it's just so refreshing to be. Some people are gonna be coming from the snow. Let's be real, and just to have, even a 70-degree day, I think is going to be refreshing. And so, I'm looking forward to it. I haven't been to Florida in quite some time, and I know they're still cleaning up in that area, right? They were recently affected, but not so bad like some of the other areas, but they're ready for us. They've said they are ready for us. So don't have any reservations about, how is it going to be? They're ready. They're so ready for us, and we're ready for them too. So I know. I can tell you firsthand, that's fine. Especially the Punta Gorda Charlotte Harbor is fine. Yeah. You were out there right after and right before too, weren't you? So, you can fly in and out and all of that. And I think that's the beauty of Florida, right? They are ready and they know, okay, we have to turn this around, right? I think that's the one thing. Like if something like that hit like California or Nevada, it'd be a different story. We're not ready for that, Yeah,
it's a way of life down here. I'll briefly tell a quick story. I was at the Violand event from our friends from Violand Management, and there's this old saying down here in Florida. It's a way of life, unfortunately, in the summertime. You don't panic about hurricanes until I can't remember his name, but I'm looking until Jim Cantore shows up and the Waffle House closes, right? Then we got problems.
It's serious.
So I remember the last hurricane came through, and I saw this is Jim Cantore recording live from Sunseeker Resort. I'm like, oh no, this isn't ideal at all. And luckily, it was fine. Cool restoration story about that. And we talked about that. It was built last year, but it's built to withstand a Category 5, and it did just that. This big storm came through, and a little flooding in the garage, but who cares? So anyway, side note.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's normal though too, right? I think here in Vegas, if we get even maybe an inch of rain that's falling very heavily, everything on the Strip floods. It goes through the Lynx parking garage. It's normal, I will say, for us, right? And it's just you just adapt. And speaking of that, being hurricane resistant, if you wanted to ever, essentially be there or withstand a Category 5, hey, where to stay.
There's reasons why Florida is a big deal in restoration, right? Yeah. The drying, all of it, and they go through that sadly every year, a few times. So, and that's why we wanted to come back. And the people said we want to go back to Florida. They all want to come back to Florida. True.
I was just going to say that.
We found a place that in Florida we can take them this year. So hopefully they'll be happy.
Yeah, I think so. And I think what better place to be and talk about all of the elements, right? Mold, water, fire, all those things. I think, gosh, what a great place. Not only is it beautiful, you're talking about and talking with people who actually know that space, see it on a regular basis. It's nothing out of the ordinary for them, right? Speaking of which, we are going to be announcing probably after this or before this airs some agenda stuff, right? So looking into the agenda, I know we over the years, we've talked about how it is cleaning and restoration. And sometimes, we don't get the opportunity to lock in some pretty heavy hitters for cleaning and restoration. But good news, I will not name names, but I will definitely say both keynotes are industry specific. One is very oriented with cleaning. However, we're going to discuss the process of making a career, right? And the importance of how everything interconnects and interrelates. And then we do have a panel for restoration, which I think if you are in the Florida area or even on the East Coast that does have, some unfortunate circumstances with catastrophes, this would be the place for you to be, right? I think we worked really hard on this agenda. Looking back, I think we did, and it's going to show at the end of the day how hard we did work on it and how important feedback is and how we want people to enjoy it, right? They're coming out of the field. The least we can do is make sure that it's something that they truly enjoy.
Last year, one of my goals, and the 1 year I was running it solo, was we want to balance all those great leaders that speak a lot of the experience versus new faces and new names, which are so many. And I was so proud that the 4 keynote speakers that on my watch they'd never been a keynote before. We had two market leaders, Leighton Healy and Garrett Gray, of course, from CoreLogic in the Vegas, but Mr. Violand and to represent the business management and restoration side, and Jim Pemberton, the legendary Jim Pemberton, the cleaning. And yeah, it's important that moving forward, and you did a beautiful job of this. And you say we, and I appreciate that, but really you did this of getting some real good cleaning and restoration representation, because we always jokingly say all the cleaning, not joking, it's true. All the cleaning people I talk to think it's just a restoration show, and all the restoration people think it's just a cleaning show. So we got to work doubly hard to make sure everybody's represented, because it's both. And I think you did a great job. And you did a great job on that, and you did a great job. You're going to do a great job on this show too. If I could circle this back, I think I'm so happy that you decided to resurrect this. Well, yeah, I had a lot of fun meeting people, and if you're a leader and you're coming to the experience, if you've had an experience, Kayla's going to give you a call. Trust me, and you get to bare your soul in front of everybody like I just did, which is it's not so tough. It was fun.
And it's okay to ask me hot seat questions too. I truly don't mind. I think there's a lot that people don't know about me, and I think that's the beautiful thing. It's a conversation starter. We're always learning new things about one another. So thank you for passing me the torch and, really trusting me. You had no reservations about bringing it back or anything like that. So speaking of that, what advice do you have for me in carrying out this series?
Oh God, I don't know. I didn't think of that one. Well, advice for you, I think, you know what? I just be yourself. Don't be afraid to ask hard questions. People want to, don't be afraid to ask hard questions, but in the same token, make sure people know kind of what you're going to ask, and they don't want to be completely taken off guard. As we talked about at the beginning of this, people love talking about themselves, and the fact that they're big leaders in the industry is fine, because they're going to talk about cool stuff and get people to know them. Just make sure you diversify your guests, and make sure you just have fun. People are way too stressed these days, man. Just have fun. Make sure they answer the question about something odd about themselves, because that's just a lot of laughs going.
Yeah.
Enjoy yourself. We had a lot of large loss, hurricanes, we have a lot of serious issues we deal with in this industry. Here's a chance for an hour a week. You could have a lot of laughs and fun. Take advantage of it.
Yeah, I was definitely going to say it's nice to humanize things, right? Like you said, just be yourself. I mean, most times we do have our business hat on, and just if we can take that hour, 30 minutes, whatever the case may be, and just be a human, and maybe still have the professional hat on, but just be a person, right? I think that's the biggest thing, is allowing people to be a person. With that being said, any last closing words? I'm sure you'll probably be on again. Maybe I'll yank you over here again, but any last words?
I'll always be happy to do whatever you want for you and Darlene and the brand. Well, as I told, last words are, as I told everybody when I left as publisher of R&R last year, I want to thank everybody for just letting me play in their sandbox. This has been fun. I learned so much. And I think that this is a great industry. Like we said, everybody gets into this industry. You want to make money and have a good business, of course. But the root of it is you want to go help people. And don't ever lose that fire and that spirit, and you'll be great. And just thanks. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, you'll see me again. I'll be in Punta Gorda.
Yeah,
for sure.
He'll be in Punta
As long as Darlene's around, I'll be around.
He'll probably be in Las Vegas as well. Don't let him fool you.
I'll be around, of course, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is you said it best. We're all thankful for everything that everybody does day in and day out, and we're just a small piece, right? I think us here, we're a small piece, but they're the driving force, and it allows us to learn and love what we do every day. And the least we can do is host a fabulous event to show thanks, but also contribute to their future and even more success than they've already seen. So with that being said, Please make sure you make the plans to attend the Experience Convention April 8th through 10th at the Charlotte Harbor Convention Center. And it's in Punta Gorda, Florida. You can register now through our website at rnrmagonline.com. On the top search bar, you'll see Experience. And of course, you can always find these R&R videos and podcasts on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. So if you haven't already, please feel free to leave us a quick review, ask questions, like and follow us on social media. And thank you again, Michael. I appreciate it. This was Trade Talks, Unlocking the Experience. Thank you for joining.
I want to welcome a special guest today, Brian Sanchez, who is the owner of Telic International. Sounds like a big name, sounds like a big company, but Brian, tell us a little bit about you and your company just to get us started.
Hey, good morning, Lance. Thank you for having me today. So again, my name is Brian Sanchez. I am the owner of Telic International. Telic International was founded in August 2019. It's funny how it started. It was more of a situation how the company got started. So basically, one day I was talking to a friend who owned a painting company, and we were discussing. He was a longtime friend, and what happened was he was upset one day. He told me what happened, and basically what happened was he was like a one-man shop, right? He was the owner and basically did sales, did everything himself. So what happened was he was with a client, turning in a project that he had finished, and he had a missed call. So after he finished with the project, he returned the call. It was a prospect basically calling back. It was around a $50,000 project that he missed because he missed that one call. So when he spoke with the person calling, they were like, "Oh, we found someone else. Sorry, too bad, so sad." So obviously he was upset, and then I have a pretty big background in call center operations and everything else. So I was like, oh my God, this could be an opportunity to where, remote services can be geared towards, small, medium-sized businesses. A lot of people think that this type of service is only geared to big companies, right? So this is how I started. I started thinking about what could I do to help small businesses, achieve their goals, reduce payroll cost and be more efficient.
Well, let me ask you a question then. What kind of specific services do you? Because I thought it was more of a communications company, but it sounds like it's a lot more than that.
Yes, so we do anything remote services that could be seen as administrative, any back office. So we do anywhere from inbound, outbound call handling, graphic design, marketing, social media, billing, anything that you could think of that anybody can do in an office, we can do, but obviously in a virtual environment.
Sure. Well, you mentioned a minute ago the painting industry. You were working with a painter. How would your services work with like us in the restoration and assessment for indoor air quality industry?
So the nice thing about what we do is what our niche or emphasizes is getting the right people to the right client, right? So our onboarding process is very in detail to match our employees to our customers. So obviously the customer will tell us what background they want per se, but the customers would have to kind of train him on their internal SOPs and procedures that they have. But overall, we can basically service and cater to companies across any industry.
Okay, so like we have a lot of specific things in our industry with testing, processing supply, samples, things like that. I guess your people could be trained to help out with some of that.
Absolutely. We've had customers that we've done data entry and in a lab environment, a medical environment. We also have some customers in the restoration business as well. So yeah, we can definitely cater any company across the board as long as is some of the back office duties that we just spoke about.
All right, I'll put you on the spot here a little bit. I mean, in the restoration business, we got a lot of challenges. There's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of stuff that's happening very quickly. You're dealing with people in emergency situations. How do you like see your company and your people fitting in, helping with that?
So the great thing about like I said, our business is we cater, right? So we can work 24/7 as long as on the onboarding process they tell us, okay, look, we need you from this time to that time. We have internal supervisors and team leads that can assist the client oversee and manage the employees as well. Like I said, it's all about the training, but we also have the ability to run reports, call reports, KPIs to make sure that everything is geared and in line with the customer's expectations.
Well, I'm sure you've noticed that the world has gotten very small recently, and we're dealing with people all over the country. We do a lot of international work. Do you guys cover any other languages or just English based?
No, we do English. Also, we also do Spanish and Portuguese as well.
Okay. Any plans on any future languages?
Well, I'm open to it. Honestly, especially we're based out down here in South Florida. You know, our number one request is more Spanish than anything else. But we're definitely open. If anybody has a need for another language, we can definitely explore that and try to accommodate that customer as well.
Are most of these people bilingual at this point? So we're dealing with English, Spanish, English, Portuguese, and so on.
Yes, sir. Correct. Yeah, everybody in our company employees are both bilingual, English, Spanish, or English, Portuguese.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the competition that you're facing. I mean, I'm sure there's other companies out there that do something similar. What makes you like I want to say the pinnacle, or what's really the best out there?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Lance. So one of the main things that we do is, there's obviously a lot of competition out there, but what we do is, again, we want to put the right employee and match them with the right customer. So our onboarding and our recruiting process is different. So let me explain to you in a nutshell how we do things. Number one, we're confident on our talent with our employees. So what we do is we handle month-to-month contracts. We don't have customers sign a 6-month or a year contract to where customers might feel, oh, I'm going to be tied to the company. What if it doesn't work out? I'm going to have to pay a fee. No, with us, it's a month-to-month because, again, we want you or the customer to feel, okay, if it doesn't work, next month, I won't continue, and that's it. So we do month-to-month renewables with the contracts. That's number one. Number two, when we recruit candidates, what we do is we send 5 resumes at a time to the client. The client will review those resumes after we validate them, obviously, and they do a second interview with whoever they want to speak with. So that way, the customer has a part on the recruiting and the onboarding process to see, obviously you want to see if the people match, if the feeling on the person, the personality. That's a big thing when you hire someone. So we want the customer to be part of that process, right? And then, like I said, once we do that, and let's say we assign an employee with the customer, if for some reason that person doesn't work out, or the client says, look, I want someone else, we'll change them and we'll start the onboarding process with another set of candidates without any fees, no penalties, nothing. Also, just one thing more to add is the customer can add and decrease any type of employee that they want on a month-to-month basis. So, for example, Lance, you have a company, you start with 2 people, but your workload starts to increase, and you say, hey, Brian, I need 5 people for the next couple months. Okay, you'll have the 5 people, and then after that, if you need to decrease, we'll decrease them, and that's it. So we're very flexible. As long as you give us some leeway, we try to tell customers to give us at least 10 days before the end of the month if they want to increase or decrease the number of employees. So a lot of the competition, they don't do that. A lot of competition, they want you to sign a 1-year contract. They want to tie you in, and that's it. So that's pretty much our competitive advantage over other companies. And also, is like I said, is a dedicated employee. A lot of people that I've talked to, for example, people in the Philippines, someone told me that they tried the service. They're actually one of my customers now. And when he tried it at the beginning, it was a few years back. And he told me, it's like, one day I would have one person, the next day I would have another one. So, you know what I'm saying? So you'll have your employee, you'll train him, it's your employee, and we'll manage it as we go.
Okay. Well, we have a lot of one-man operations up to large franchise companies to licensing companies and everything in between. So, I mean, from what you've been doing and more specifically to the restoration industry, any kind of success stories? Anything you can let us know about without divulging any secrets?
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we've had customers, we had one client that we had 27 employees working with them for 3 months doing billing. They needed to get billing. They had a deadline. We were able to help them. Again, that month-to-month contract was good for the customer. And our goal, like I said, is to help businesses, small, medium-sized businesses, achieve their goals, grow and everything else. And look, maybe they'll start with someone like us as a remote employee. Down the road, if they're more financially stable or they grow to a certain level and they want to have people inside the office, that's okay. We want just to help the customers achieve their goals and grow. Again, like I said, we have also people doing sales. We have a client that, he's had, over 150% growth on sales because we have a couple of employees on the phone. And when they have leads, right then and there, they call the leads. There's no lag time on when the lead is received. So, yeah, it's definitely, it's been a success, a proven success throughout the years that we've been in business.
You just said something that caught my attention. You used the phrase "in the office." Are you a remote-only company, or do you provide local manpower too?
We are a remote-only company. Now, if there's a client that needs call center services, for example, they need, instead of 1 or 2 people for admin work, if they need an actual call center, we can definitely assist with that as well.
Do you do anything with emergency operations, like a disaster like Florida gets a major hurricane or something and we need a large call center set up? Is that something you can do as a one-off, or does it have to be contracted out long-term?
No, we can definitely do that as a one-off. Actually, a few years back, we had a client that we were doing the actual overnight answering service. So after they closed, we manned the phones, late at night and early in the morning, just in case they had an emergency. We definitely were able to staff for that as well.
Okay. Well, within your industry, I'm sure there's a lot of very positive comments and success stories, but I'm sure there's a lot of misconceptions out there too about, like you had mentioned before, about companies trying to lock you in for a year and stuff like that. Where do you stand on that kind of stuff, or what do you see?
Well, a lot of the companies, number one, they're stuck in sometimes in the mentality that they need to have someone in the office to oversee and everything else, obviously increasing payroll cost, overhead. But I think after COVID, it kind of opened the eyes to a lot of people that remote work is, number one, reduces cost. Obviously, in office space, overhead, and payroll cost. But again, it's a proven success over the years. And yeah, like I said, a lot of people think that, and that's the thing, like you said, it's a long-term commitment, right? They're afraid. They say, okay, oh, and by the way, all of our employees are background checked. That's another one. People think, oh, they're going to handle some, confidential information and everything else. All of our employees are background checked. Obviously, we're liable for our employees. So yeah, so basically, I don't see any downturn on any of that.
Well, what I've seen, and I'm sure most of our members and people watching this have seen, is over the years, especially since COVID, a lot of people started remote working. And that was always a bad thing, at least in the corporate mind. We can't control our people. We don't see what they're doing. And then all of a sudden they realized they were getting just as much work done their people weren't as tired with all the commuting, and they were saving a fortune on office space,
Exactly.
and utility bills and all the other things that go along with that. And I think that's right, the target zone that you're really working in now.
Correct. Yeah, 100%. And again, and right now with technology, we're technology driven. We can run KPIs. We can run, if a customer, a client needs us to do weekly, monthly call reporting, outbound calls, anything like that, we can definitely cater to that as well.
So if you can be specific about how you can help a restoration company or an assessment company, indoor air quality company, anything specific that kind of jumps out in your mindset for what you can do to help?
Honestly, like I said, we have a couple of companies that we service in the industry, and we do all of their admin work, call handling, and that's the time consuming stuff that I always like to say, focus on your core business and let us handle the rest, right? So, for example, social media posting, marketing, and call handling. We actually have some people doing billing. Obviously, once they're trained, and it takes a little bit of time training the individual. But we have anybody doing, we have people doing billing. We have people doing the back office operations. So it's basically all up to the client as they see fit on what they need to train on.
Do you have people that are able to do like web design and stuff?
Oh yeah, web design. Yeah, we even to the point in social media to know the algorithms, when to post, the hashtags, everything like that we can definitely do.
Sounds kind of like a one-stop shop kind of a thing here.
Yes, sir. That's all we want to do. One-stop shop. And like I said, at a reduced cost, help companies out and help them, just focus on their core business and grow business. And we view this as more of a partnership than anything else.
Well, let's throw a bad word into the mix here. Scale. And everybody talks about that, and the reaction you get from people, they almost get this like green complexion. Oh, scale, it's going to cost a fortune. How do I do that? Where do I start? How do you guys fit in on the scaling, helping these companies out?
Oh, like what we just talked about, Lance. Obviously our services are at a fraction of a cost that would pay with having someone in site. And we'll grow as fast as the company grows. So we manage part-time and full-time employees. If they want to scale, slow, we can do a part-time and then slowly increase to a full-time. If for example, they get a project out of the blue or something they've been after and they need people ASAP, I have in my staff multiple recruiters that recruit people, and we can staff as needed.
The concept of your company is not new to our group. I mean, we've been working with a company. He's a big supporter of Normie. He's one of our members, actually. He has a manpower organization, not remote and stuff like you. He's the guy that sends out, 200 workers to go shovel out something.
Yes.
And, we've used him with different disasters and stuff like that. He guarantees 1,000 people any place in the country in 48 hours. They'll just mobilize an army and send them. It kind of sounds like what you're doing, just the remote side and the more technical aspects than the physical aspects this company does.
Yep. And actually, it's funny you say that, Lance, because back in 2010, I owned a franchise on temporary labor down here in South Florida, Miami and Pompano, by the name of Trojan Labor. Is basically a competition for manpower. So I also have a background on that, on scaling, getting people in the right place at the right time. So, we also do that as well. Yes.
Very cool. Well, as far as anybody wanting to get in touch with your company and work with them, I'm going to encourage them to reach out to David from our team, and he can kind of liaise the whole thing and make the transition or the introductions there. So if anybody's watching that's interested in this, you can reach out to david@normie.org by email, or just call our main Normie number and ask for David. And he will help you out getting this process and getting connected with Brian. Is there anything else, Brian, you'd like to tell us about you or your company that we didn't cover? I mean, I don't want it to seem like it was a general, but I don't want to dig in too much into, the secret sauce that you're using.
No, no, absolutely. No, and like I said, thank you, Lance. No, for everybody, like I said, we are a well-rounded company. We're here to help you grow, and we view this as partnerships, not, as necessarily as us just getting clients. And from my end, like I said, I have a vast experience in the call center and operations. I also was in the Marine Corps, so I know the discipline that needs to be done running a business. And again, we're here to serve. And if you guys want to have a talk with me, we can definitely go through what you need in the company. We'll assess and make recommendations, and then we can start the onboarding process.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. I know you're very busy. We were playing phone tag trying to get this set up, for a few days. So
Yes, sir.
it's just the way business is nowadays.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you for having me.
And once again, we are back live from the experience, and I have somebody different that we're going to talk to. This is a little different type of company than all of the other interviews that I've been doing today. And I have Greg with us here, who's the CEO.
Yep.
I got that right?
Yep. You got it.
Of SFY University.
Yep.
And it sounds like it's a college, but from what you've described to me, it's not.
Yeah. So we do, we have a SFY and SFY University, kind of two different sections. One section is we write estimates, and then we also will defend those estimates. So we'll do the invoicing, the collecting, the billing, all that stuff as
That's
well.
estimates for contract.
Yeah, estimates for contractors. So let's say you go out to a job, you do a DocuSketch, a Matterport of the property, and usually you probably either have your in-house guy do that estimate, but we'll go from having the in-house guy do it. We'll do that process for you. So we'll write the estimate, and then if you want us to go ahead and call the insurance company and do the communication with the billing, the collecting, and the rebuild side of it, we do that as well.
Where's the pricing come from? Is that company specific, or is it just a general?
It's a general, right? So to do us to write the estimate is going to be 1% of the estimate value, or $150 minimum. And then that does scale down. If you get to $100,000, it scales down and kind of trees down a little bit the larger the project gets. Now, if you want us to do the invoicing and collecting, that's a separate fee, and that's 5%. And we'll do all the communication with the insurance company. So total all in would be 6% if you're doing everything.
So the company can focus on doing the work and not
Yes.
having to chase around and get the money
Yes,
back.
yes, exactly.
As far as the price though of the job and the work that's being done,
Yes.
is that something that the company gets to set and tell you what they will bill for certain things?
Yes. Yeah. So we take your lead and your guidance of what you would like. Obviously, we write the estimate in Xactimate or Symbility, whatever you prefer, and we'll set those. But you're more than welcome to say, hey, look, this is going to cost me more. I need X. We'll make those adjustments to the estimate for you, and then also submit that to the carrier if you want us to fight for that.
So where are you guys located?
Currently, we're located in Denver, Colorado. Highlands Ranch was the south side of Denver. The company's remote. We have about 70 plus employees that work for us, all remote across the United States, and do really well there.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
How long have you been around?
We've been around for 8 years. I kind of come from, I used to own and operate a roofing company. And then I owned that for 8 years and sold that company. And then I was really good at the administrative side of it. So I went from doing that to the administrative side of work of supplementing and billing and writing estimates in the roofing side. And then we got a lot of requests to do it in water. So we came in the water side, and now we do roofing and water.
So I understand now your interest in being on the collection side, having a roofing company in the
Yes.
past and chasing people around and get paid.
Yes.
So let's look at this from demographics. You have around 70 people. You cover the entire US?
We do cover the entire United
Do
States.
you go outside of the US?
I have not gone outside the US yet.
How about US territories?
US territories will do. We haven't had any opportunities to land that direction yet for us.
Okay, do your people actually have to go on site, or is it all done by remote?
It's all done by remote. So your guys would have to make sure they're going on site and do the proper documentation. So I would say garbage in, garbage out, right? So if we get garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. But if you do good work coming in, you'll get good work going back out.
And what kind of turnaround time is there?
Yeah, we're looking at anywhere between 24 to 48 turnaround time in the estimate side of itself. Sometimes it's 72 if we have a spike in work that comes in. You just give us a call if you need to rush. We can rush that file for you. But the other side is on the invoicing, collecting, you're right around the 15 to 30-day mark. In the rebuild, that tends to be a little longer just because we're also working with you simultaneously as the build's going on. So that tends to be about 30, 45 days. Sometimes go a little quicker. Just kind of depends on the contract and the pace that they're working at too.
So this is the first time we've spoken. So
Yes,
I'm hearing things and my mind is starting to spin question-wise.
go for it. Let's fire them away.
We have something called the Normie Pro Environmental Task Force.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of that before or not, but it's really a team collaboration of everybody in the indoor air quality environment,
Okay.
which is everybody here.
Right. Yeah.
Every contractor, every visitor, everybody here is doing something under indoor air quality.
Right.
We deal with disasters also.
Right.
Floods, hurricanes, fire damage. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you say, well, have crews that are going out and they're going into these devastated areas.
Mhm.
Then they have to take crews off the road to go write up estimates.
Yep.
Where they'd be sending it straight to somebody else handling it remotely.
Yeah, it's by far, I think, in every business, I think you should have a relationship, whether it's myself or another company, that's a third party to help you remote write estimates, because you can't staff for large disaster or large, huge spikes in your company. You'll never maintain profitability margins, right?
And that's our purpose for the task force.
Right. Yeah. You just can't. You can't staff for when a hurricane comes into a certain area or a giant loss or a giant flood hits a certain region. You just, or a huge freeze across the country, right? You can't staff for that, and learning to use the other resources that are at your fingertips to be able to scale super quick is very important. That's something we do very well, right? And since we do across the United States, we're able to leverage our resources across the entire United States. So let's say a certain part of the region is not doing super busy, but another part is, we're able to move that resource much more easier than companies on a local level would ever be able
And that's what I heard when you were talking. That's really the functionality of our task force.
Right. Yeah.
So we will talk offline
Yeah,
about
that's
this a little
great.
bit more,
That's
but
great.
so what else can you tell us about the company? Anything about the employees that you have?
Yeah,
or-
I think, I think there's an element that I think in taking a company and going remote, right? So there's a lot of things in communication and developing and building a team into building a team environment that is harder to do in remote situations than would be in person. So this is something I think employees and companies, how do you create value for employees and staff? How do you show value? So this is one thing I think we do really well at SFY is every quarter we do challenge coins. We make these coins. They're nice metal coins that we get made. They cost about $3, $4 a coin to get made.
Right.
We get them made and we make all these fun different kinds of coins. I have like a Master Yoda coin. I have, the goat coin, we have a guru coin.
So I understand the Twitch influence
Yes.
here.
Yeah, right. So there's all sorts of different types of coins. We have fun names with them. Some are just amazing customer service, that type of stuff. But then we do a card and we send out a card, but then we do a presentation. But this is where initially I did it wrong. So I made the coin. I did a special handwritten card, wrote it out, and I just said, Lance, hey, I want to let you know you did a great job. Here's your customer service coin. Thank you for all your hard work. Right. And that's what it is. And I sent it out and did whatever. But I didn't feel like I had the impact that I needed with the staff to create the right engagement of what all the lift I did. Right. I'm like, I'm missing something. And you would get a monetary value with the coin as well. So I felt like I hit all the check boxes and I did the presentation, but I didn't realize I was missing one of the key things in recognizing employees and staff. Hey, Lance, I want to let you know, here's a customer service coin. What you did with ABC Restoration, how you picked up the extra work, and you made that extra phone call at 5 p.m. the other day and stood online for till about 6 p.m. It's things like that that really improve the quality value here at SFY, right? And that's why you're getting the coin, right? So we were missing the why behind
Exactly.
the appreciation, right? And I was talking to a couple of different people.
Reinforcing the
Yeah,
good behavior.
Yeah, the good behavior, right? And people like to see that as a company, we're recognizing and we can see the small behavior. So we had to find the small things of what it is. So if someone said, hey, look, and the employees get to nominate people for the challenge coins. And I'd be like, hey, look, how do you value this person? Just because they're a hard worker isn't going to cut it. What did they do to create the hard work? What was it that they did? We need to tie that to a specific thing. They did something specific that made you recognize it. What was that specific thing? So we can recognize that to the individual and then they see it. So that's one thing I think at SFY being remote and being able to create the encouragement and develop that. That was one thing I think we did really well.
It motivates your personnel to do the right type of work for
Right.
the customers. and-
Yes. Yeah. So that's one thing I think we've done really well at being a remote company and trying to create team collaboration and unity within the team and company. That's one thing I think we've done really well.